You're listening to Death of the Reader. We are flexing herds. This is the extended cut on your Murder Mystery World Tour as we wrap up Too Many Cooks.
By Rex Stout.
By Rex Stout.
Starring Nero Wolfe, the greatest detective of all time.
The greatest detective who ever ate.
That's the one. Whoever ate an entire cow, probably.
Do you think he did that?
I mean, I have to... Look, he might have eaten at least a third of a cow in one of the books.
You don't think Fritz would have at least chopped out something?
Oh, like... the organs, I guess so.
I mean,
This is why we don't run a cookie show. We could not tell you how many parts of a cow you're supposed to eat and not supposed to eat anyway.
Can I be honest with you?
Yes, this is the inserted cut. Of course you can.
One of the recipes in this book, saucisse minuit, is that how you...
Saucisse
minuit?
Saucisse minuit. Minuit.
I tried to make it.
Oh yeah? How'd that go?
It was a nightmare.
Yeah?
I managed to get a copy of the recipe from a group of Wolf fans in the United States, the Wolf Pack. So thank you very much to them.
Shout out to them.
It was agonizing and did not go well.
So was it a problem with the recipe or with the...
It was a mismatch in my skills. Like, I can cook.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't say I'm a great cook, but I can feed myself without ending up with some horrible disease.
You can make a grilled cheese sandwich.
I can do better than a grilled cheese sandwich, though admittedly I would probably always go for a grilled cheese sandwich.
It's a good option.
But basically, to put it in short, this is a turducken sausage.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Now, I don't know if you know how a turducken is made, herds.
Mm.
It's a turkey, a duck, and a chicken all inside one another.
Yes.
Now, that's not exactly what the recipe is, but that probably gives you the correct image of how much agony I went through to fail at making this recipe. And I'm sorry that we couldn't bring it to the show because the audio of it was basically me screaming for 20 minutes. And as much as I would have loved to have edited that down, here is a snippet. Oh, God. You're listening to Death of the Cooking Career right now. Oh my God. The lining for this has completely split open and the last, how long has this been? Wasted, done, pointless. I'm not even going to I can't put this on the show. And now you will see why it's not on the show.
Yeah, this is... You could only put that in the extended cut.
I could.
You could only put it here. I will say, I'm disappointed that I wasn't able to taste your delicious turducken that you were going to make for me.
I'm pretty disappointed that I didn't get to taste it either.
Maybe next time.
But hey, who knows? Maybe next time we visit Rex Stout, I'll pick a recipe that wasn't so incredibly difficult.
Maybe I'll cook it next time.
Maybe we should have inquired with one of our guests, Kirsten Wright, as to what recipe would be most sensible to do.
Maybe we should have asked Lucy Burdette, but she would have just told us to put poison in it. So.
That's true. Anyway, up first on the extended cut, we have chapters 1 to 6, where we'll be talking about Rex Stout himself.
Yep.
A bit about the story and the setup for this crime, which we seem to have a fairly hefty portion of the book in the first episode here, Herds. Yeah. I'm very interested as to why you picked that.
We picked almost half of the novel because that's where all the clues are. Things take a while to get going. It is an indulgent novel. That is the term of the day. I'm pretty sure I say it at least 20 times during this entire extended cut. It takes a lot of time just getting things going, and I love it.
Our guest for this episode was Lucy Burdette, American crime writer, author of the Key West Murder Mystery series.
Lovely.
And I'm really looking forward to getting to check out one of her books further on down the world tour.
Oh, we should have her on again.
Maybe we should take a trip to Key West.
Yeah.
I hear it's really eccentric.
Take some selfies, indulge in the eccentric lifestyle of Key West. Yeah.
Either way, this is chapters 1 to 6 of Too Many Cooks by Rex Stout right now on the extended cut for Death of the Reader. You're listening to Death of the Reader on 2SER. We are flexing herds. This is your Murder Mystery World Tour. And herds, it's time for a new story. And what a story it is.
Yeah, we're dealing with Too Many Cooks by Rex Stout and the larger-than-life detective Nero Wolfe. We'll be covering chapters 1 to 6 inclusive today. The introduction of this murder between, chefs.
It's the premise of this novel is that 15 of the best chefs in the world get together in a country house.
It's supposed to be 15. Some of them have died.
Yeah. The best chefs in the world, however many, get together in a country house. One of them gets murdered, and everybody knows who it isn't.
Yeah. It's not the ones who have died, and it's not Wolfe because he's not a chef. He's a guest speaker.
It's so absurd. The premise is ridiculous, but the number one thing that this book has, pun intended, is flavor.
This is true. This is entirely accurate. It is an absolute joy to read through. The cadence with which the characters speak in this book, the amount of time that we spend talking about trains and food and more food is phenomenal. We spend the first 4 chapters or so just talking about how lovely it is to be at the Kanawha Spa, just eating food together and cooking, and how wonderful that is. It's ridiculous. I've never read a murder mystery book that spent so much time self-indulgently discussing its subject matter.
And not to mention, the paragon of character in this story that is Archie Goodwin, our perspective, our Watson, our hero.
Let's be clear here. Nero Wolfe is our detective, but Archie, he subscribes to a very specific notion in this novel. He supplies us with an important role, and that is literally the legs of our detective. The gimmick that we have is that Nero Wolfe is this large, lazy, indulgent, much as the book is, man, and he's an intelligent, he's an incredibly competent detective, but he hates going places. He hates walking. He loves to send Archie out on errands. There's one part in particular where he has to call the sheriff, Mr. Tolman, to his room, and he just sends Archie out. He says, I don't know how you're going to convince him, but you got to do it. There is no other way that this book would progress without Archie's help.
And just the way that he presents everything with so much character. Like, we've just come from SS Van Dyne, who influenced Rex Stout a lot in terms of the style and setting and structures of his story. But the one thing that Rex Stout did not inherit was the blank slate, faceless characters. Everyone here is vibrant, and everyone here is subject to the extremely subjective opinions of Archie Goodwin. And it's amazing. Everyone ends up with nicknames. Everyone ends up with epithets. I love it. I love it.
He's beautiful. I really love the dynamic that these two characters have and watching them trying to solve this mystery together. And one thing that really does stand out to me as we're comparing this to Van Dyne's work, we're often told about how, particularly Markham and Philo Vance, they have this like friendly yet they don't like each other kind of relationship. I really felt that in this novel. The relationship that Nero and Archie has, where they're constantly making quips at each other, and like it's not always clear they're getting along, but Archie really comes through to it. He still runs around and does everything that Nero Wolfe needs. He is instrumental to the solving of this whole case.
Yeah, and I think that that's definitely one thing that stands out in this book to me in terms of our murder mystery world tour, is that you can definitely see where the influences are in this book. It's not like some other books we've covered where you can look at a book and say at a face value that this author was influenced by another, and you just kind of have to accept it because they read each other's work and referenced each other's work. Here you can feel the influence. The things that Rex Stout is doing with Archie and Nero Wolfe feel like what I wanted Van Dyne to be doing with Markham, with SS Van Dyne, and with Philo Vance himself.
Yeah, sure.
Now, one of the interesting things about Rex Stout himself is that he was a prolific author, not only in the sense that he was successful, but also that he just wrote a lot.
Yeah.
There are 46 novels, 3 short stories, and 7 other stories that are in the Nero Wolfe canon, and that's just the ones that Rex Stout wrote.
Yeah, there's a really interesting circumstance because he stopped writing this series, but others continued it. And I don't think he wanted anyone to, but it was so successful, people just got to write murder mysteries, I suppose.
Yeah, and he originally began his career as a kind of serious crime novelist dealing with psychological and political thrillers. And then Fer de Lance, his first Nero Wolfe book, was kind of his step into more pulpy canons of literature. And I think that he's done very, very well.
Yeah. I do like how kind of maybe dirty is the right word this novel feels. Certainly compared to what we've read previously with Van Dyne, we have characters who refuse to go to crime scenes. We have characters who put their lives on the line. We have characters who get into, danger while chasing these criminals. This is very much a staple of Rex Stout's work, and I find that incredibly interesting. Even though we're supposed to be dealing with an armchair detective, somebody who literally just stays at home in their armchair, and yet he's fairly involved in this, He has a train to catch in 2 days.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a little bit of self-projection coming in from Rex Stout himself there, because I know that Rex Stout's relationship with his work wasn't particularly attached. One of our producers went through and did some research. Shout out to James, our producer, for this. Apparently, he began writing each book on the 18th of October each year and finished it sometime in April.
That's
and
excellent.
Afterwards would just spend the rest of his year gardening, which I know some authors in the modern age would love to have that kind of luxury after finishing a book to just be able to stop.
Yeah. Well, that's what Nero Wolfe wants to do.
Exactly.
He wants to go home and tend to his orchids and drink 49 types of brandy. And that's what he does. That's what he wants to do. But he's been caught up in this awful murder case that is quite the bother. I should clarify, the brandy story in particular is from the initial novel, Feu-de-Lance. We're actually introduced to Nero Wolfe by him announcing that he's fed up with bootlegged alcohol and that he wants to acquire a new brand. So he sends his cook Fritz, who doesn't feature as prominently in this novel, but Fritz goes out and finds a sample of these 49 different available legal qualities of brandy, brings them to Nero, and that's the opening chapter.
Yeah. I will say, I think that is probably one of the weaknesses of this story is that there's a lot that we're just expected to just trust in because we were expected to have read the rest of the series. Like Fritz is just constantly hailed as this amazing cook, but it's only ever in mention. We never actually get to meet the man.
We'll have to read the other books to see what a fine gentleman he is, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, speaking of food, I know that you've said, the best part about this book is something that's actually in the book.
Oh, yes.
But I want to dispute this because I have gone on a whale of an experience outside of the book itself. So
Do tell.
I want to talk about TooMany Cooks. It wasn't just a book when it first came out. It was a cultural phenomenon, so to speak. Because when this book came out, in the first edition of the book, in the hardcover, there will be printed 35 recipes for the different meals that are described within the novel itself. And beyond that, Rex Stout himself went on a tour of America with there was a revolving stage and a Hollywood rider and all of these musicians and actors that they had on this big show that they took all around America to promote this book in part with the American magazine. It's crazy. And yeah, so you can actually find the recipes online.
So I knew that this book came with recipes. I did not know about this tour.
Yes.
That is amazing.
It's the Cook's tour, I believe.
Puts book tours these days to shame.
Yeah, dude.
They had a traveling band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They had everything. I've actually found there is a site called Inspired by Wolfe. That's Wolfe with an E on the end. WordPress.com, and there is some fine person who has cataloged their experience in trying to replicate all of the recipes in the book, and also some that they've tried for themselves from other novels, from things that are mentioned. It's insane, including the saucisse minuit.
However you
That's what we're going with.
Small sausages.
Bounce pass. That's the one. It's beautiful.
We have got to try and get that person on the show.
I would love to. I'll get on it.
Now, I suppose in this murder mystery, Hertz, we should actually address the murder mystery.
Oh, do we have to? But I love everything else so much.
You're right. The murder mystery is really not the best part of the story, and I'm completely okay with that.
Yeah. It's it's not necessarily straightforward, but we're presented with these 15 or less cooks, and we're even given a list of all of them on a handy dandy little page.
Yes, it's always nice when your murder mystery authors give you a list of characters.
Yeah, it's nice.
So the victim of this crime is Philip Laszio, a man who has stolen the wife of Marko Vukic.
Vukic?
Yes.
It's the French word. Just like Archie Goodwin and Rex Stout themselves say in the foreword of this novel, we don't know how to speak French.
Yes, but basically what happens is there is a taste test competition to see which of the 15 master chefs can tell what ingredient is missing from a certain sauce, and each of them goes in one after the other to try and taste test it. All of these having been prepared by Philip Laszio. And after the taste test, Nero Wolfe is the last to walk in. And what does he find?
A corpse.
A corpse.
Philip Laszio with a knife in his back.
There's a fantastic moment there where Nero Wolfe comes back out of the kitchen and says, Archie, could you come join me? And they walk in and Archie's like, oh boy, I get to taste the food. And then Nero's like, is that man dead?
He's like, yeah, I guess we should probably do something about that.
It's so good.
A pleasant holiday, I tell you, Archie. But no matter, is he dead?
Dead as a sausage.
Oh, I see. Archie, we have never been guilty of obstructing justice. That's a legal term, let them have it. But this is not our affair, at least for the present. What do you remember about our trip down here?
I think I remember we came on a train. That's about as far as I could go.
He nodded. Call Mr. Savan.
Like, he never explicitly mentions how disappointed he is, and some of the one-liners that he delivers in the moment are fantastic, but you can just slowly see his disappointment grow as the scene goes on, and I love it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So Flex.
Yes, Herds?
I know that you love Archie Goodwin.
I do.
Archie Goodwin is, as his name implies, he is a good win.
Yes.
But Nero Wolfe has the most strange sense of honor. He complains, he confounds, he yells at the sheriff when he says, oh yes, Mr. Sheriff, I don't want to help you solve your murder mystery. I got a train to catch back home because I have more important things to do. But he is truly the hero of this novel, and we can tell that because when Mr. Savan and Miss Costanza and Mr. Vukic, they come to his house and they say, you must take the blame off of Mr. Barin, who is going to take the fall for the true killer. And he says, you know what, maybe I will. And they say, we have brought 11,000 francs to persuade you to assist us in this. And he goes on the most beautiful rant.
It's excellent.
He has some of the best quotes in the book. I would say the best.
Really?
I would say the best.
Ooh.
Yeah, let's go through it. Let's go through it.
I don't know if I necessarily agree, but I'm interested.
There's one line in particular.
Confound it!
Wolfe had to make it almost a shout. He wiggled a finger at Savan.
Apparently, sir, Marco is informed of my rapacity. He was correct. I need lots of money, and ordinarily my clients get soaked, but he could have told you that I am also an incurable romantic. To me, the relationship of host and guest is sacred. The guest is a jewel resting on the cushion of hospitality. The host is king in his parlor and his kitchen, and should not condescend to a lesser role, so we won't discuss.
And that line is perhaps the most Philo Vance that Nero Wolfe ever gets.
I mean, the line that I want to focus on is the guest is a jewel resting on the cushion of hospitality.
It's so good.
I love it.
This speech is excellent.
Yeah.
Having said as much as I have on how amazing of a character Archie Goodwin is, let's not forget Nero Wolfe, admittedly.
The romantic of the group.
His pleas for the recipe for tiny sausages to Jerome Berin is amazing. He's this tough, gruff man who, he gets his way when he damn well pleases. But
he gets stopped over little sausages. He's beautiful.
So good.
Nero Wolfe will always be my favorite character in this book. Archie is lovely, but Nero Wolfe is the true hero. Let's be clear.
As with every murder mystery, I will always say that Watson is the true hero. And that has yet to be broken for me in any murder mystery.
We'll see. We'll see how we end up. I gotta love me some Nero Wolfe.
But Nero Wolfe nearly pulled it over the line for me.
He is a magnificent specimen of royalty among kings, sir. He's the king of detectives. Yeah, so we're presented with this death of one Philip Laszio somewhere in the midst of these 10 cooks. The last person who says they've seen him is Berin. So maybe there's some lies happening there. I don't know. That's not up to me to find out. I already know what's going on.
We'll speak about theories more coming up in the final part of the show today. But the one thing I think that you should know going forwards is that everyone thought that Philip Laszio was going to die.
It's true.
Everyone was threatening to kill him, but no one was really taking the threat seriously.
Including his wife. His wife came in and was like, somebody tried to poison my husband. And Nero's like, well, I'm sorry, but I can't help with that because I'm not a bodyguard. I'm not a food tester. I'm not able to help you. I only saw people after they're dead. It's great.
There is, as we've said, so much character in this.
Oh, I love him.
But I do think that this is a very different take to any other murder mystery that we've covered on the show thus far, where normally we get the murder as a surprise, or we get the murder straight in the introduction. Here we get 2 chapters of this person is going to die. This person is going to die. And then they die.
And nobody is surprised.
And no one is surprised.
No one could be surprised.
It's such an excellent change of pace from the murder mystery norm. And it's not to say that there aren't other stories out there that have done this differently, but I think that the way that this story approaches it is incredibly unique and, again, very flavorful. You're listening to Death of the Reader on 2SER. This is Flex and Herds, and today we're discussing Too Many Cooks, a novel which bridges the gap between the warm comfort of food and the cold, hard facts of murder. And we've decided to chat today to Lucy Burdette, American author of the Key West murder mystery series. Lucy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Lucy, people tend to associate food with the cozy feeling of sitting down next to a nice meal among friends, and murders with the grisly world of crime. What motivated you to marry those two concepts in your own writing?
Well, I can't say that I came up with the idea because there have been murder mysteries involving food writers and cooks for a while. Probably I started because Diane Mott Davidson's series about a caterer was something that I really enjoyed. So when I thought about becoming a mystery writer, I thought of food. And also, my editor at Penguin was looking for somebody who could write a series featuring a food writer, a food critic. And that sounded like fun to me. So that's how I got started. And now let's see, number nine just came out, A Deadly Feast.
Those concepts are very far apart. How do you go about blending them in a way that is palatable, if you'll excuse the pun?
All the action is seen through the eyes of my main character, who is a food critic. So some of the food is just having to do with what she does in her daily life. But she also uses food in ways to connect with people and to find out what's happening with a possible murder suspect. And of course, there's poison, which I've used a couple times. I try not to overuse that.
So, Lucy, I have to say that all of your foodie murder mystery titles are fantastic. We've got Killer Takeout, Death with All the Trimmings, and your most recent novel, the 9th novel, A Deadly Feast. How do you come up with these?
I usually start with a title that's not that clever. And then when I finish the book, then the marketing machine at the publisher starts coming up with ideas. I will say the one that I just turned in is called The Key Lime Crime.
Ooh.
And I like that one a lot.
That's good.
I love it.
Yes. So I had to go around Key West and try out as many key lime pies as I could put my hands on.
I do think that what you were saying about, connecting the social aspects of food with how your detective solves the crime is a particularly interesting approach, because a lot of classic murder mysteries, like the stuff that we cover on the show, we tend to get a very impersonal side to our detective. How do you think the importance of making your detective someone who can stand up in a social situation is important in the way you write your mystery novels?
Well, my novels are in the genre that's called cozy mystery novels, and those are named after Agatha Christie's Tea Cozy. So they're on the lighter side. You're not going to see blood on the page. You're not going to see sex on the page. And in the end, all the bad guys are punished and the mystery is tied up. So I think that's what appeals to a lot of readers right now, because the world is so crazy and things feel so out of control that they like reading a book where something bad happens, the good guys take care of it, and they're punished.
Yeah, and I know that in the most of the novels that you've written, the premise kind of centers around your food critic detective, Haley Snow, being put front and center in the action, either being accused of the crime or one of their friends or associates being accused.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you think that modern audiences cannot simply have justice for the criminal as the sort of stakes of the novel? Do we require this, this extra emotional buy-in of a threat to the detective themselves?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think if you're familiar with Michael Connelly's novels, he has a character who is an LAPD police detective. So he has as his job solving crimes and bringing people to justice. But I think the thing that makes his book so much more powerful than that is that he also shows us the inner life of his character and why his character is driven to do this job. So I think a novel, maybe in Agatha Christie's days, you didn't have to show a lot of what was going on with her characters. But these days, I think readers expect it. And they also get connected with the whole community and the character. I have people writing to me telling me which character they liked or this character would never do that. And it's like a family to them.
Yeah, I think that's something that I see even in some of the mysteries that we have here in Australia. For example, some of the crime fiction TV shows we have, there's a lot more that goes on revolving around the detective. And I can definitely think that helps audiences connect more with who the detective is, especially when you get on with serialized stories as opposed to some of the one-offs that then spun off into their own series back in the golden age of crime fiction.
Yeah. And as far as my series goes, in the first book, Haley was a suspect in a death by key lime pie. But you can't have her be accused of a murder in every book. It's just, the things are not that realistic anyway, but that is really unrealistic.
Yeah.
So then it becomes a question of figuring out which one of her friends or relatives might be in some trouble so that she is compelled to look into the mystery. Because if it was me and there was a murder, I would run the other way. I would not do what she does. So you have to have some kind of reasonable thinking behind that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that you've written Haley Snow and her situation very much as a regular person would approach it. And as we know, she's a food critic, thrust into unexpected situations, having to solve a murder. In TooMany Cooks, a novel that we're talking about this week, Detective Nero always has his trusty Archie by his side to alleviate the pressure of his work. How does Haley cope with the pressure of solving a murder mystery, every other week?
Well, she has a roommate who's probably my most popular character. She's an 80-year-old woman, and they live on a houseboat. And she really keeps her grounded. She, keeps her laughing and is a very sensible person who gives her good advice. So that's one thing. She also has a friend. I don't know how much you know about Key West, but it's a very quirky place with all kinds of oddball characters rattling around. And one of the people I've become friends with is a tarot card reader. So he has become a character in the book. So if she is upset about something, I was a clinical psychologist before I started writing. Rather than go to therapy, which is what I suggested to her, she will go and talk to the tarot card reader. And she cooks and she feeds people. That's a great pleasure for her.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very kind of realistic take on an amateur detective essentially being forced to solve these murders. You have to find some way to deal with it. And a tarot card reader, even though that may not be to everyone's taste, it's how many people deal with these sorts of situations. It's a very realistic kind of take on it, I think. Yeah.
It's realistic for Key West. You wouldn't see them so much in the rest of the world. But this guy in real life is a very smart person who has a way of seeing beyond the surface. So I don't think it's not too woo-woo. I don't think people should be put off by that. But it's just another way of somebody being able to read the universe and understand people than what would ordinarily be.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were a clinical psychologist before you were an author. Obviously, you have these characters that reflect some of the experiences that you had in this job. Now, the early eras of American crime fiction often focused a lot on elements of psychology and how they thought they could be applied to the crime. How does your previous work inspire the actual crimes and puzzles that you write into your stories?
Well, I think it's most helpful in that I can really think about what makes people tick, both the bad guys and the good guys, and think about murder is a very extreme action to take. So what could it be in this person's makeup? What kind of secrets could they have that they're trying to hide, that they would be pushed to this? So I think having that psychology background helps with figuring out motives and understanding the characters. Before I wrote this foodie series, I had another short-lived series that featured a clinical psychologist as the amateur sleuth. So that was fun. That was closer to who I really am.
Yeah, I think it's a very ambitious attempt to show, a murder mystery criminal as a realistic kind of person, not as just a force to be reckoned with, but as a real character in the novel. I'd love to know a little bit more about how you kind of put those criminals together, I suppose. What are you drawing from in that instance?
I often will start with the person that's going to be most involved in the crime. So, for example, in the second book, which was Death in Four Courses, there's a food conference going on in Key West, and Haley's good friend Eric, who is also a clinical psychologist, becomes one of the suspects. So she starts to try to even explore his background and see, is there some reason why he's covering up what he was doing at the place where the man was murdered, because she doesn't believe he was murdered. And then also, as she goes around listening to the talks about food and food writing that are happening in this conference, she is thinking about what is motivating these people. So it really, I would say the easiest way to describe it is secrets. Who is trying to hide what? And one of them is hiding the fact that they murdered someone, but the other people have powerful secrets too.
And obviously, as a clinical psychologist, a large part of that job is helping, your patient to uncover their secrets and have them articulate, what's going on with them, that sort of thing.
It's very similar because when I was a therapist, someone would come into my office for the first time and I would say, how can I help you? And what they would tell me was the problem often didn't end up looking much like what we figured out in the end. But maybe they were hiding that from themselves, which a character also could do, or they were didn't think it was relevant, or they were too embarrassed to talk about it. But it's all those kinds of questions that I used as a psychologist that I can use in this writing too.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting parallels to the way that suspects and culprits are laid out in crime fiction. Well, Lucy, thank you so much for joining us on Death of the Reader. We really look forward to maybe later on down our Murder Mystery World Tour getting the chance to cover some of your Key West novels. And
I'm going to have to read that Rex Stout novel now. I'm a little ashamed that I haven't read it.
That's all right. TooMany Cooks. There's still 2 weeks left of the show. Plenty of time.
Excellent. You're listening to Death of the Reader. This is Flex and Herds with Lucy Burdette, author of the Key West novels, and we'll be back with Rex Stout's TooMany Cooks in just a second. You're listening to Death of the Reader on 2SER. We are Flex and Herds. This is your Murder Mystery World Tour, and we are discussing chapters 1 to 6 of TooMany Cooks by Rex Stout.
It's that part of the show where we discuss who is the killer of Philip Laszio.
Yes, I am the blind man this time. Herds has seen all, and it is up to me to determine who the killer is and inevitably be right, as always.
That is highly debatable. Just because it's happened every time before this doesn't mean it will happen again. That's some kind of probability law.
You are not wrong. You are not wrong.
Thank you.
So far, I have a pretty good success rate on picking the culprit in the first episode, but I will concede to you. Herds. I'm actually kind of stumped on this one.
Have I finally found one? Oh, I can't believe it.
I don't think so.
Oh!
I still have a theory, but it doesn't really work based on the laws of physics.
The laws of physics? Is this a science show now?
So let's just say that the person I suspect is the culprit could not have been in the place of the murder at the time of the murder with the victim or weapon.
Makes sense to me. I don't even know who you're going to go for now. I'm excited to find out. I don't know what's gone. I'm trying to figure out your own murder mystery you present me right now in the studio. This is excellent.
So,
all right, tell us. How you feeling?
I think that the key to this murder mystery, as the story kind of goes on to show you itself, is where everyone was in the dining room at the time that the murder took place.
It's very interesting that the whole of chapter 3 is the murder. There are so many little tiny clues that I will, we'll discuss as we go forward, but we're given this list of the chefs that are going in to taste the sauces, and we know that Burin says that he saw Laszio and Vukic says that he didn't. So the murder probably happened either between them or around them. But then there's a question of accomplices, of like how many of these cooks are in on it. I don't know how you're feeling about that.
Now, the thing that we do know, and this is what I'm going to lean and rest on, is that Dina Laszio did at one point go into the kitchen.
It's true.
And then Dina Laszio is the only person when we have left the kitchen that has a character moment that doesn't make sense. And that is my whole theory.
Are you telling me that
whole theory right now?
Are you telling me that she killed her husband with a knife?
I don't think so. I do not think that she could have been there at the time he died, because I believe she goes in before the last person to see him alive, which means that she has exited the kitchen and left before he's died.
This is the problem, isn't it? That we one particular detail that might interest you is that we're given the description of Dina turning on the radio and going to dance with Vukic, so she could not have been in the room at least immediately before he went in, because she was dancing with him. So unless the murder occurred quite a bit before Burin went in, there's not really a lot of space there to work with.
Yeah, there really isn't. And that's why I'm a little stumped by this one. I do not think that it is impossible to solve within the period of chapters that we have selected. However, the amount of evidence on which I could call it a solid theory is flimsy at best.
Can I be very clear here? I have given you half of the book.
Yeah.
If Murder Mystery Worth Its Salt should have enough clues in the first half of the book to solve its murder.
I absolutely agree. I just don't think that this is a murder mystery that will give you a solid bit of evidence. I do think that the evidence is there, and that's why I'm still pinning it on Dina Laszio. All right? But let's be clear here. Rex Stout himself was an author who was not interested in the fair play of the genre.
Well, I suppose so. I suppose he does have a disinterest in such things. He's more interested in the character moments and the flavor of the novel, as we've said earlier.
His 1950 essay, The Mystery Story, explicitly said that he was not interested in the fair play. It was about good storytelling and a mind for constructing puzzles rather than solving them.
Yeah. He's much more interested in the kind of pulpy side of things, creating this cast of characters that we can kind of follow through the book and creating comedic moments that he is of laying out a very strict murder puzzle, which is something that we've seen in SS Van Dyne very explicitly. So go read that if you haven't.
Yeah. I do love this book, and I do think that it's excellent, and its construction still seems fair to me. It doesn't seem like an unfair puzzle, just an atypical puzzle.
There should be a solution that makes sense, yes.
Yeah, but I do think that this novel draws further away from my preferred style of puzzles than your Van Dynes and Ronald Knoxes of the world.
Sure.
I do not think that this story introduces the culprit in what I would consider the early part. We have Dina Laszio mentioned, and I do think it's her, but we do have other characters that continue to show up later who I think maybe are too close to the crime to quite be a Knoxian fair story.
Fair enough.
If you're not sure on what we're talking about with Ronald Knox and SS Van Dyne, we do have episodes on the podcast explaining their list of rules on how to play the genre fair. But I think the ultimate detail for me, Herds, with this one,
Yeah, flex.
is Dina Laszio coming out to dance with Vukic and her with the radio.
You think the radio was important?
Because everything that everyone else does in that scene is very in character with what we've had them described. You know, there's an argument between a husband and wife who are separate from the Laszio couple, have nothing to do with it. It just kind of sets the scene. They run off into the distance. A couple of characters leave because they don't like Philip Laszio and aren't seen for way later. And, you know, obviously they're meant to be the suspects, I think. But I think that because we are in that scene, because we are looking at what is happening for the entire time in which the murder could have happened, it must be someone in that scene that is involved. Dina Laszio going up and flirting with her old husband, who for the rest of the story she doesn't really seem to pay much mind to, and then going up to the radio, turning it on, dancing with Vukic, and then when they lose signal, going up and being like, oh, well, you know, the radio's not working, I'm done here. That seems to me like a cover.
You think so?
Yes.
You think that she's you think there's some kind of accomplice business going on here?
I think
or?
so. What I am stumped on is who actually put the knife into Laszio, Philip Laszio, that is. I think that Dina is responsible and involved in the crime and is covering for it by operating that radio, but I don't know who is the actual one wielding the knife.
You say that it's, you know, difficult to pin down and there's all these laws of physics going on, but there's a very simple explanation here.
Okay, I'll hear it.
That will suit your purposes. So the location of this murder is specifically the Pocahontas Pavilion in Kanawha Spa.
Yes.
Looked after by one Louis Savant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what if he was responsible? What if Mr. Louis Savant, maybe he didn't even do the murder himself. Maybe he had one of the hired help do it. He has plenty of servants.
Why would he do that?
I don't know. Maybe he wants to bring some notoriety.
Of all of the characters you could have picked, he seems to be the one that is least upset by Philip Laszio.
But that's the trick. He is the least upset.
That's the
and
front.
so he's the obvious, character who's done it, you know?
You know, that's some real backwards logic. I'd love to know what scene in the book you're backing that up with.
I am backing it up with the scene where, and I actually have one. So, chapter 6.
I'd certainly hope so if it was your theory that you would actually have evidence to back it up.
Don't worry. I got you. Chapter 6, Savant, Costanza, and Vukic come into Wolf's apartment.
Yes.
And they offer him a large amount of money to try and clear Burin's name. But Savant doesn't actually say very much in that scene. You will notice.
So once again, it is inaction that you are suggesting.
That is exactly what I'm saying.
Right, I say.
Let's be clear. When I play games like Mafia and I'm the killer, I'm just saying inaction is the best form of action. You let the other people duke it out. You let them accuse people. You say, I don't know nothing. I ain't doing nothing. That's the easiest way to slip under the radar, my friend. And I don't know what the scheme could be. Maybe he's trying to bring some notoriety to the spa. Maybe he's trying to, deal with Laszio as competition.
I don't agree.
You don't
Shockingly
agree?
enough.
Why don't you agree?
I think
it's the obvious pick.
What's his name? Liggett? I think that Liggett is a more likely culprit.
Liggett's?
Yes.
Why is he a likely
Liggett,
culprit?
who was out of the state
that makes no sense.
when the crime took place and rocks up at the end of chapter 6.
Yeah, dude.
Or end of chapter 5, rather, is more likely than Savant.
Why is he likely?
Because at least Liggett is made to seem suspicious. He's talking about stabbing people. He's talking about disliking people.
It's true.
He's still clearly got a hand in the pie and could also be searching for the notoriety of this place, as he does have a hand in it. So,
Are you telling me that a character who's in New York and a character who was clearly seen outside of the pavilion when the cook was stabbed, when Laszio was stabbed in the back, are more likely than the owner of the spa, the person who knows the ins and outs, who knows the staff? You saying they're more likely than him?
I am not saying based on positioning and timing that Savant was more or less likely.
I find this incredulous at best.
All I am saying is that there is absolutely no motivation whatsoever for Siobhan to be the one responsible.
Maybe it's not been revealed yet. How do you know?
Well, then why did
Sir?
you tell us to stop at chapter 6, Herds?
Because you have to be able to figure out who it is.
I'm gaming the
Not
system.
why.
I'm
I
gaming
don't know what
the
you're talking
system.
about. There ain't no system here to be gamed. The system is that you lose,
I will
sir.
say, I think the story wants me to believe that it is Leon Blanc who has killed
Now,
Philip
he's done
Laszio.
even less. He just walked away.
Well, yes, he walked away at the time that the crime could have taken place. And you see, now that's the tricky number here.
Okay.
And I also note that when we get Dina come out and start to play with the radio and dance with Vukic is when it's Vukic's turn to go into the kitchen, which means that she was probably trying to create time from whoever her accomplice is. All right? Now, I think the story wants me to think it's Leon Blanc.
Uh-huh.
So if you really must make me pick who stuck a knife,
I do. That's the whole premise of the show. What do you mean must make you pick?
all right? If
Sir?
if I must,
If you must do the whole point of the show.
I will say
you must.
that it is Leon Blanc. However, I do
What's the
not.
motivation?
Well, he clearly doesn't like Laszio. The reason he's out of the scene is because he was complaining.
But nobody likes him. I'm just saying.
I know, but it's because he left the scene that the story wants
I
me
see.
to pin it on him. So I don't know. It's either that or Liggett is lying and was there the whole time, but that seems incredibly far-fetched.
It's true. It's true. It does.
So I don't know. I guess
There could always be a device X. There could always be like maybe the radio was a signal for like a rope to be cut.
You
that
know
would
what?
set up some kind of machine
You're
that would drop a
absolutely right.
knife into Lazio's back. But that's the thing. Everyone's like, "Why would you stab him in the back? You got to at least stab him in the front if you're going to kill someone." That's why the trap.
I will concede as well that they do mention that he was killed behind a screen.
Yes.
Which means that even if they were trying to waste time killing him while no one was in the room, it wouldn't have mattered because you couldn't have seen back there anyway,
It's true,
unless you had a
it's true.
keen eye like Nero Wolfe.
It's true.
But
Too bad he's
But-
never at the right place at the right time because he's
Too
always
bad
his damn
indeed.
chair. He's always his chair.
I
man.
will say, Herds, if you're suggesting to me that I should throw out all rules of fair play,
No,
then
never.
yeah, let's go device X. We're
right.
going to say that, Philip Laszio had a disease that meant that when he tasted the wrong kind,
Oh my
the wrong
goodness.
kind of sauce, he just developed a knife wound in his back.
He's routed
it's just
a knife.
condition.
Yeah, it's a family problem. I can't control it. What do I do?
And
That's
this is
beautiful.
why fair play is important, Rex
It is.
Stout. I will not stand for this nonsense. I will not stand for you, Rex Stout. Rex
Are you
Stout.
pointing at me? You
I will
looking
not
at me?
stand for you, Rex Stout, who
Okay.
died in 1975 writing stories that are not fair play.
that
I
he
will not
enjoys.
stand for
I
it.
will not stand for him. We're going to go dig up his grave and let him know what's
No,
what.
that's too far. That's too far.
That's what I heard from
We'll
you.
write a letter
Come on,
to his
guys.
publishers.
Where's the lynch mob? Let's go. Please don't. We don't want to get in trouble with that.
So yeah, I will say I think that Dina Laszio is the ringleader.
Okay.
I will say that for the sake of having to pick someone, Leon Blanc is the knife wielder.
Fair enough. I like it.
Though I will say that there is an enormous amount of doubt on that second person.
Low radio.
Yeah, I will concede, Herds, you have finally given me a story where I cannot confidently say everything that has happened in the first episode.
Really took us-
Congratulations. I'm
really-
going to reach my hand across the studio table, shake yours. Well done. You finally picked a novel that you definitely picked and wasn't me that picked it and gave it to you to give to me.
It's a good novel.
It is an excellent novel.
It's so good. I finished it.
I just have to take credit for your work somehow.
It's true. I mean, you have to take credit for something, don't you? If you can't get points, you might as well take my dignity.
Well, listen, I could still get points. I still have next week to get points.
It's true. It's true. And I'm very curious to see if you do pick out who the killer may or may not be by the end of next week. Because I will confess, I don't think that there are as many clues as I would like in a murder mystery. But hey, that's why this is your week to shine and not mine. Good luck, sir.
There is still a point on it, I hope. We're not just abandoning...
Oh, no, there's a point.
Okay, good.
There's definitely a
I will
point.
be
It's like a
certain-
chicken grease covered
I
point.
will not rest until I have that culprit in handcuffs.
Good luck. Good luck. Maybe you can save Burin from his fate. Oh, dear.
Either way, this has been Death of the Reader. We have been discussing Too Many Cooks by Rex Stout, chapters 1 to 6. We will be back next week with which chapters, Hertz?
With 7 to 13, chapter 7 to 13. And maybe we'll learn some more wonderful recipes for murder.
I'm really hoping.
Yes.
We should try one of these recipes and bring it into the studio with us next week.
We gotta find them. Apparently, they're very vague recipes that are mostly based off of the time of year and the size of the stomachs of the people you're serving it for.
Well,
let's
right.
give it a go.
We are people who
Scientists.
create solutions.
Yeah, that's what we do. Scientists of murder and cooking. Let's do it.
Put that on the resume.
Scientists of murder and cooking. Next time on Death of the Reader.
And that was part 1 of Too Many Cooks by Rex Stout here on the Death of the Reader extended cut. Herds.
Flex, we're moving into the middle portion, which is, the stuffing of the chicken. We're moving into it.
I was struggling to solve that story there. This is the first time this has happened.
I know.
Tell me how it felt to finally sit across the table from me almost defeated?
It felt great. It felt
did?
like I was on cloud 9.
Uh-huh.
We'll see if that feeling will continue, though.
I will tell you now, Herds, it will not.
Yeah.
I wouldn't let it. I wouldn't ever let me get to the second episode without having a solution.
Gotta knock you off your high horse sometime.
I look forward to it. And it won't be fair play. And then I can accuse you of foul play.
That's all right.
And then we can get articles in the papers about our show collapsing.
Yeah.
And it'll be a good time.
It'll be great. Yeah, in the second part of this world tour through Too Many Cooks, we're going to be looking at some psychology, some NCIS style criminal psychology. That's going to be fun with Leo Coyne. And also chatting about the romantic that lives inside the pudgy exterior of Nero Wolfe.
Fantastic.
And our guest, of course, is Kirsten Wright, author of the Inspired by Wolfe blog that she hasn't updated in 6 years, but there are cookies on the site, so we love her all the same.
It is a fantastic blog, and I'm very glad that we managed to get Kirsten on the show, and that she was in Australia, and thus we didn't have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my goodness, it's so nice not having to run an interview at 5 a.m.
We've only had to do it a couple of times, but it sure is good getting a break from it.
It's always pain, especially on a Saturday.
This is Chapters 7 to 13 of Too Many Cooks by Rex Stout, right now on the Death of the Reader extended cut. You're listening to Death of the Reader on 2SER. We are Flex and Herds. This is your Murder Mystery World Tour. And Herds, I am so excited to continue with Too Many Cooks.
I'm ready to continue. I'm just hoping that I can stick in the lead here. Look, this is a complicated novel. There's all sorts of characters being thrown at left, right, and center. You couldn't possibly figure out who the killer was, sir.
Well, I mean, I could figure out who the killer was if the killer wasn't actually one of the people that's being thrown at us left, right, and center. They're more like left over in the distance.
I see how it is.
But we'll get into that a bit later in the show.
We're doing chapters 7 to 13 today, inclusive. I particularly enjoyed the closing chapter. We'll get to that.
It was a weird time. I will say, the big twist of the final chapter, we won't spoil it immediately for you. We'll talk about it coming up shortly. But
so good.
I kind of had to rush reading this book a little bit. And I got to chapter 13 and I was skimming through and I was like, wait, what? There's a hole in that? How did that get there? Who did they borrow that from? But no.
Where did that bullet come from? Was there a nail?
I was just a fool. I was
Somebody's
just a fool.
Finger? No, sir.
This is why you should read your books thoroughly.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we're going to get into it then. If you haven't read the novel, you know what? Maybe listen on anyway. Maybe you'll enjoy yourself.
Maybe you will enjoy yourself. We don't actually know who the culprit is just yet, so maybe it's worth trying to figure it out along with us.
Yeah. Get your notebooks.
I think the main thing that is worth talking about in this section of the novel is civil rights.
Yeah.
And basically, we spoke with Dr. Mike Grost on a previous episode of the show about S.S. Van Dyne being a proponent of civil rights movements and various other murder mystery authors doing the same thing because it was a genre that seemed to be, very open to that sort of thing unless you're G.K. Chesterton.
We won't talk about him.
I mean, we might in a later episode, but we will definitely ridicule him for
I hope so.
But basically, this story uses a lot of racial slurs. It uses a lot of racial stereotypes. But it uses them in a very intelligent way where I think that it is expressing distaste for those things.
It's fascinating talking about this novel in a modern context because for the time, this is very progressive.
Yes.
The way that the novel treats black people in the novel is incredibly respectful compared to how people of ethnicity were treated back in the day.
Yeah.
And even though it contains all of this language, generally, the characters who are using particularly foul language are not the heroes of the story. The heroes, Nero Wolfe in particular, which I was pleasantly, not surprised, but pleasantly, able to receive, he's a very respectful civil person, as is Archie Goodwin, obviously, because Archie Goodwin is, the good boy of the story. Particularly in the quote-unquote interrogation scene, where we gather all of the servants together and we serve them tea.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
It's a really fantastic scene. I think the main thing is with the use of language in this story is, as you say, everyone who is using slurs they're the dogs of the situation.
Yes.
They're the police, small town cops who have no understanding for the whims of modern men. And I think you can see every time a slur is used, Archie and Nero both immediately start using another term. And it tends to be a term that they haven't used before, almost intentionally pointing out, here's another option.
Yeah. They don't actively combat anyone or argue with them very sparingly, but they are actively pushing against this stigmatism that these characters are putting forward, and I really love that.
Yeah.
It particularly is because it's often the cops, right, who are putting these using this foul language, and so we're taking the trope that we talk about in many murder mystery novels of the detective versus the police. And we're not just using it as who's trying to solve the case the best, but also like who is respectful of the people in the case.
Yeah.
And how does that actually actively lead to a progression? Like if Nero was not a respectful, forward-thinking person, at least in this regard, we'll talk a bit more about that later, we would not have progressed this case.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have been able to get the information out of the servants that we were desiring. It's really clever.
Yeah, and perhaps the most offensive thing that is done in the book is that the culprit is caught wearing blackface.
Oh my goodness.
Which is terrible.
How would you even adapt that?
Yeah, how
today?
would you adapt that?
You wouldn't be able to. It would be too offensive. But
the good thing is that, of course, because it's the culprit, they're going to get their comeuppance, and that's obviously presented in the book as a detestable thing. And I think that, as we say, that is an admirable quality of this book, particularly for its time. We know from Dr. Mike Grost, again, that Rex Stout himself was actually the leader of a World War II era writers group whose goal promoted non-stereotyped treatment of minorities in the media, which is a really important thing for its time.
It's huge. It's a huge part of this book. I'm so glad we're doing this book. Oh, excites me. That said, Nero Wolfe is a terrible sexist, but we won't hold that too much against him just because he thinks that all women are hysterical.
Okay, yeah. I think the interesting question there, and let's get into this, is that I think that Nero Wolfe is presented as a character who's that is his character flaw, right?
Yes,
is
I
that
agree.
he is a romantic, but he's a romantic for food. He's a romantic for culture. He's not a romantic for romance itself.
Yes, sure.
And I think that that's presented as his character flaw because everyone is constantly critiquing it. Yeah. And even some of the terrible things he says about women in this book, everyone immediately calls him out on them, even more so than they call out the racial slurs.
Yeah. It's somewhere between a joke on the part of the writer saying, "Oh, this Nero Wolfe with his old-fashioned views. Look at what an old, awful man he is," because. This is why I find Nero Wolfe so interesting as a character, is that he is a three-dimensional one.
Yeah.
He is not just the detective who gets everything right and is, a projection of the author themselves. He has these very progressive views on ethnicity and people of color. He has very backwards views about women. He loves food. He's lazy. He needs someone to run around and be his legs for him. I love him as a character, personally.
Yeah. And I do think that when we're talking about minorities in this context, we should also mention that many critics of Rex Stout's work did say that Archie and Nero Wolfe had what was reflective of, early gay relationships. Not to say that they were actually a romantic couple, but it normalized a lot of the things that were seen as detestable back in those days. And, same field, same praise. Sure. I think it's good.
Oh, definitely.
I think the line that perhaps most reflects this whole ordeal to me is it's set in the context of talking about love and romance by Nero Wolfe. Well, it's actually a quote that someone else quotes Nero Wolfe saying from, I think, a previous book.
As you say, a hole in the ice is dangerous only to those who go skating.
And I think that that's very much the approach that this book takes to sensitive topics, right? Is that it's taking a risk by doing this in a time where this was perhaps objectionable, but it's made the book age much better than it otherwise would have for the language it uses.
Yeah, there is a particular quote, a particular discussion that Nero Wolfe has when he's trying to
He's trying to interrogate this group of black servants and trying to encourage them to stand with him on the side of justice.
The ideal human agreement is one in which distinctions of race and color and religion are totally disregarded. Anyone helping to preserve those distinctions is postponing that ideal, and you are certainly helping to preserve them. If in a question of murder you permit your action to be influenced by the complexion of the man who committed it, no matter whether you yourself are white or pink or black.
What I think is particularly fun about that excerpt is that though he's speaking it to a room full of black people, he doesn't specify within that particular train of thought. He says, whether yourself are white or pink or black, the statement that he's making is to everyone, to the white people who discriminate, to the black people who discriminate. He's trying to make this statement that we need to put color completely to the side, which is insane for the time, and I love it. Oh,
yeah, and it's not to say that he was the only writer that was doing it, but I think that it's still worth pointing out and complimenting.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Even if everyone's doing it, it's still something we should acknowledge.
Yeah.
Especially for the time it was written in.
So that's all of the social civil rights movement stuff that this book does For now. We'll maybe get into some more of it a bit later, but I think it's time we talk about the actual, the puzzle, the murder.
Oh, I guess we should.
Not to say that we should solve it right now, but I think one of the most interesting scenes that goes down in terms of the puzzle in this section of the story is our discussion with Leo Coyne.
Oh, and the intro to this discussion is one of the funnier moments of the book. Yeah. It reads like a parody of like NCIS when Abby, the forensic expert, says, I've put the fingerprints through the lab, and this piece of plastic, it's from this place in town, and it could have only been this person. Like the scene is that Nero Wolfe pulls Archie in to do this little performance where they pretend to have fingerprints that they've, run through the procedures, and it's all very vague, and they convince Leo that they can, track her, they can pin her down as the culprit of the crime through these fingerprints that mean literally nothing to them. I love that scene.
It's fantastic.
I love the way this novel plays with your expectations.
Yeah. Especially when we look at writers like Van Dyne, who Rex Stout was obviously influenced by. We saw a lot of the same sort of thing in his novels, where basically he was saying, well, what all of this chemistry nonsense, it's just made up rubbish. We need to deal with the psychology. And that's exactly how it's presented. Except that we're not being given a verbal essay by the detective. It just happens, and it's a moment of comedy. And I love the way that it delivers it with such a lightheartedness.
They are, in fact, using the psychology of the process of hunting a suspect to lure Leo in to get her to tell us what she knows. Yeah. It's so good.
And I love Archie's perspective where he's slowly figuring it out along with us. And he's like, I saw the moment that Miss Coyne entered the room, that this was where I had to pick up my notebook. And Archie, once again, just the best character.
I mean, I like Nero. Look.
Which is very interesting because, obviously on this show, I'm presented as more of the detective solve everything type, and you're presented as much more of the Archie type character. But it seems that we consistently like the opposite characters.
Look, you like what you're not, okay?
Opposites attract, they say.
This is true, opposites attract. But Flex, we're in a war zone here, okay? There is no love. There is no love in war. We can't have it here. I'm sorry, Flex.
It's all right. It's all right. I think one of the other fantastic comedy character moments that this book has is when Savan, the host of the entire event in which this murder has happened, gets up to give his speech on food, which everyone's been hyping up and talking about for days and days and days. And then we sit down and Archie's like, oh boy, I can't wait. And he starts speaking in French, and Archie just goes and reaches for the bottle of cognac in front of him.
Yeah. He might as well just take a nap at that point. Oh, poor Archie.
It's excellent.
He just wants a break.
Yeah, and I do think that in those scenes, there are some really interesting character moments that are fleshed out through the whole cast. We get to see, this is what the Green Jackets, what they call the servants, at least what Archie and Nero call them most of the time. Yep. Them doing their service and what that shows from how they act, seeing everyone's body language in that scene. I don't think there's necessarily anything that's a huge giveaway for the actual culprit, but I do like that every scene we have still feels like something is being achieved, even if it's not going like, and then we found more fingerprints upon the floor.
Well, we wouldn't find any fingerprints. Fingerprints are purely for coercing witnesses at this point in the story.
Yes. And one thing I do like about that scene, going back to Leo Coyne there, she is the one that witnesses the culprit supposedly wearing blackface. And I do like the way that she is presented. You know, normally when we get a witness in a murder mystery who's trying to pretend that they didn't know anything for the fear of being found out that they were there and that they'd be suspected, you know, sometimes that comes across as very disingenuous when it's like, oh, yeah, I left the crime scene like 6 hours before it happened, but no, I didn't ever visit the crime scene. I've never been to this country in my life. I don't even know these people. Who's this, my brother? No, that's just an act.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
It often reads in a very comical way like that, but I think that the way that we go through the psychological pressure of Miss Coyne, where she's like, well, if I told someone and the killer found out, then I'm next,
I'm in
right?
trouble.
I thought
Yeah.
that was much more convincing.
Which is a very founded, like the novel goes on to justify that later on as well.
Yeah.
Which is exciting. Yeah, no, I really like Leo Coyne. I'm sad that we don't see more of her in this novel. She's only really in it for the one chapter, except for when she initially, you know, hurts her finger.
Let's talk about it. Let's bite the bullet, so to say.
Is it time?
The final big twist of this section of the book is that Nero Wolfe, our detective, is shot.
Drama, action, suspense,
Yes.
romance. No romance. Throw that out. But yeah, I love this chapter.
It's so good.
It's why I wanted to end this part of the discussion on that scene. It's something that we haven't seen in, you know, any of the novels we've covered so far. A scene where the detective is in physical danger.
Yeah.
And apparently this is kind of normal for Nero Wolfe.
Yeah.
One of the grabs from his very first novel is about how there is death in this drawer and I must open it. And I mean, I haven't read the book all the way through, so I don't know what
How
happens
dare
there. But Nero Wolfe and the series that he's in, you know, there is this mortal danger.
Yeah.
That Rex Stout is putting them in. And I found that incredibly intriguing. I
Yeah.
don't know that there's ever any threat of him actually dying, although that would be a great final book.
Not that we ever got a final book because his estate was sold and more Nero Wolfe
I
books were
know.
produced without his permission.
I know.
Poor Rex Stout.
But I will say, I would call it Sweet Baby Wolf, and it would be the final novel where Wolf gets too romantic. He finally, you know, gives in to the societal pressure to find a romance partner, and he's shot during a romantic waltz. And Archie has to solve his murder.
love that.
That's my pitch.
That sounds
That's my pitch.
fantastic.
Hollywood, call me.
Except I want to respect the wishes of the late Nero, the late Rex Stout rather, and not make any more works in that universe.
I mean, I guess we could respect his wishes. The wishes
unlike
of
the
a
people
dead
who
man.
sold his estate after his wife's death.
Oh, moving on.
Moving on. But yeah, I do love the way that this scene is presented. And I do think it's important that the detective being in mortal danger is something that happens all the time in these novels. It just happens to be the first one that we've really encountered on this show.
Yes. Well, I think the other thing that's particularly interesting is that Nero Wolfe is notable for being an armchair detective.
Yes.
Specifically by his
Literally an
size.
armchair detective.
Yes, he is the best example we've had, and I would say in general is a very good example of an armchair detective. Somebody who doesn't actually want to go to the scene of the crime. They'd rather sit and think. And that's really what Nero Wolfe does. And he's, of course, as I've said many times, offset by Archie, who is the actual person who does all the work. And for an armchair detective, specifically the kind of detective who is supposed to not go anywhere, not get involved in the actual crime itself, to be the target of an assassination attempt?
Excellent.
That's crazy. There's a crazy pairing of tropes. I love it so much. Yeah, and we get to see, of course, Archie's cat-like reflexes.
Yeah.
Which is a bonus.
Which is very silly as well. Just throw a book. I do absolutely love the line where Archie says, excerpt. It's just amazing.
Yeah. The whole scene is sort of like...
I don't think I need to explain the joke because
No.
it's that good.
No, it's good. It's so well paced. And the way that the entire scene is paced out, and we start off with, you know, we're just reading the scripts.
Yeah.
We're enjoying ourselves. This murder mystery business is almost done. But the reader can see that there's still, you know, 7 or 8 chapters left,
Yeah.
wondering, you know, how this is going to pan out. It's excellent.
Yeah. And we'll talk about this coming up later in the show, obviously, but I do think that it is excellent, the questions that we're left with on who this culprit could still be, because I think this is probably the least clear puzzle we've had. We've gone from last book having the most clear puzzle we've ever had to this week having the most obscure.
Yeah, for sure. No. And I love this. Let's be clear. Herds loves this kind of murder mystery where the focus is more on the drama and the suspense than on the actual puzzle, which is exciting.
We'll be back in short order with our discussion on, is this puzzle fair? Can I solve it? And all of that fun, good stuff in the murder mystery genre solving bitsy who's a what's it of the show.
What was that?
I don't know, it was me making up words.
It's like something I'd do on this show. What is this? You're stealing my bit.
Well, we've got to trade chairs occasionally.
I suppose
say
so.
as I'm standing up.
Look, I enjoy sitting in the show. It's much more comfortable. I don't know how you do it.
I got to work on the legs.
Yeah. You do some crunches while you're doing the recording. This has been way too long. See you in the next part.
This is Death of the Reader. We are discussing Too Many Cooks by Rex Stout, and we'll be back in just a moment.
You're listening to Death of the Reader on 2SCR. This is Flex and Herds chatting with someone you've all been waiting for.
Yes, Herd said last week we would get the author of this fantastic blog about the cooking of Nero, Wolfe, and co. on, and you've done it, Herds.
Yeah, I did get her on. This is after a week of hardship and fighting. Kirsten Wright created the Inspired by Wolfe blog and longtime fan of the culinary arts. Kirsten, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So, Kirsten, I know that much as Nero, Wolfe, and Archie Goodwin would, sequester themselves in their brownstone house for the rest of the year after solving a case, you have kept yourself hidden for the past couple of years. I'd love to know what inspired you to create this blog in the first place.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. It almost feels like it was like a different time on the internet, right? Like it was, blogs are really big, and there were quite a few, I guess, of the other, blogs where you cook through a cookbook. There was Julie and Julia, but there was, I was reading, I guess, a lot of blogs where, people were taking various recipe books, high-end restaurant recipe books or, classic literature recipe books, whatever, and cooking through them. And I don't even know why I wanted to have a cooking blog. I don't know. I liked cooking, etc. And I sort of hit on Nero Wolfe because, I'm a massive mystery fan, read a lot of especially classic mysteries. And the combination of food and the mystery sort of part of it really appealed. And plus I really liked that there was a Nero Wolfe cookbook that was written by Rex Stout, the author of all the Nero Wolfe books. That felt authentic to me or something. So I guess that was the inspiration behind it. But I did make sure it was inspired by Wolfe, not just cooking through the cookbook, because I did want to sort of give myself some flexibility to do, what I wanted, not always just around the Nero Wolfe stuff. So,
I have been trying over the past few weeks to find a copy of the Rex Stout Nero Wolfe cookbook. Yeah. And there was one copy that I found that was nearby to us, but it got bought up just before I went for it.
I think I might have got mine off eBay or something. Like, I remember it was a bit of a search to get it even back then,
Now, I will say, Kirsten, I'm very impressed that trawling through your blog, I found you were able to detail the entire rich history of the Wolfe series with baked goods, specifically cookies.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, so I did basically, I decided again I wanted to learn how to decorate cookies and decorate cakes and that sort of thing. And I was like, how can I make this about Nero Wolfe? Okay, off we go. It means I've got some quite interesting cookie cutters, I guess.
I can imagine.
Slightly niche cookie cutters.
Yeah, the Wolfe on your blog is picture perfect, I would say. Now,
thank you.
I have to ask, what dish from the Wolfe series would you recommend for cooks at home from the vast library? I know it's hard to choose.
Gosh, that's a really difficult one. Look, I do actually really like Nero Wolfe scrambled eggs. That's a recipe that it takes him 45 minutes to make scrambled eggs. Is it worth it? I think it's worth doing once, and it's like a fairly, at least you only need eggs. I think that one's definitely worth a try. I think if people like baking, there's some nice, baked, sort of French-style baked recipes to do. I mean, it's all just a lot of butter, basically. That's sort of the Nero Wolfe way, isn't it? Lots of butter, very rich sauces, that sort of thing. But, I'll start with the eggs. That's a good place to start. That's something anyone could do.
I've actually had a little peek at some notes on the recipe book that shift with TooMany Cooks, which is the novel that we're covering this week. Yeah. And I've noticed, and you've commented, that many of the recipes have vague directions based on the time of day or the weather, climate, or the side of the planet that you're on. Is this like a product of old-fashioned cookbooks or a twist to add to the mystery of the series?
Oh, probably a bit of both, I think. I mean, certainly, obviously, in TooMany Cooks, they're keeping their recipes close to themselves. They don't want to, share the specifics so people can't replicate them. But yeah, maybe it's more, looking at the sort of older-fashioned cookbooks where it was just, put these things together, you'll be fine. You know what you're doing. So there might be a bit of that in there as well, I guess.
Now, on your blog, Kirsten, you mentioned that Nero Wolfe views his world his world and his life through food. How does this help you connect with him being a chef yourself?
Obviously, food is so integral to, his world and his persona, which I guess we all aspire to maybe, but probably the rest of us can't just, hole up in a brownstone and cook all day. I think it's really interesting. I was sort of thinking about this morning. It seems like, he's obviously an intellectual. He reads a lot. He's very well read. He's a detective who sits at home and lets other people go out and, see the crime scenes and look for clues. He's not going to bother himself with all that. Mm. And the food sort of, for me, seems to fit into that. Like it's a real, in a sense, intellectual exploration of gastronomy. It's not, he enjoys it and he talks about the sort of sensual aspect of it. There's something really intellectual about it for him that appeals to me because it feels quite deliberate, I guess, in a way that if you look at other sort of fictional cooking or fictional food in other mystery books, it doesn't obviously have that centrality to it. So, it is really part of his whole outlook on life, I think.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned other fictional cooking in there. What fiction series do you think could do with a cookbook the most?
See, this is quite funny because maybe I shouldn't admit to this. So I sort of stopped doing the Nero Wolfe blog because I started writing a blog about the food of Star Trek. So I went and created the food of Star Trek. I also don't do that anymore, but that's online as well if there's any crossover between Nero Wolfe readers and Star Trek fans.
I think we actually came across that on a late night special about Star Trek that we did a few months ago. Completely unrelated to this show, so that's hilarious that's you as well.
Yeah, that's me as well. So that one was a bit more tricky because I did have to make up the recipes from scratch and stuff, obviously. So obviously I'm going to go for something like Star Trek where the food's super out there and, really... visually, how do you translate what you see on the screen, that real visual element into actual edible food? I really liked a few years ago, there was the Hannibal TV show and the person who did all the set design, food design for that show, because obviously it's quite an important part of Hannibal. She wrote a cookbook as well, both talking about the design of it, but then also translating it into recipes, and I thought that was really clever as well. So... yeah, but I think for me, Star Trek would still be the ultimate, even though it's not really in this mystery vein, I guess.
I can definitely agree with that. I think that there is some excellent visual design in some of the food in Star Trek. Now, turning it back to Nero Wolfe, iconic mystery series, has a gargantuan number of books compared to a lot of stories in its space. Which one is your favorite Rex Stout Nero Wolfe novel?
Oh no, you're asking me a question when I haven't gone back to look at all the books recently.
Well, obviously you have to read every single book again and get back to us.
Yeah. I do quite like, he's got quite a few that are short stories or sort of collections, which is quite neat, and there's some quite nice ones in there. I do quite like TooMany Cooks was always one of my favorites, I have to say, because of, all the chefs coming together and the personalities and the big banquet, the food as so central to it. I do sort of like the ones when he leaves the house. There's not many, but the few where he's sort of forced to go out and do that. I always think that's sort of fun to see him outside of his element. Sorry, off the top of my head, I probably can't name a particular
That's all right.
story.
One of the interesting challenges we have on this show is that, we show typically one book per author and then move on, and then how are people supposed to know what they should look into next? So it's always good to get an extra opinion in there. I think definitely be hunting for those ones where Nero Wolfe actually steps outside, rare as they may be.
Yeah, he's got one, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it. He has to go back to Montenegro where he's from and sort of, hunt the killer of a friend, and that one's quite a good one.
So, Kirsten, I also know that as Nero Wolfe you have a lovely orchid garden. How is that going?
Not well.
Have they fallen into disarray?
Yeah, look, I have discovered over several years I'm not the best gardener in the world. I can keep a couple of indoor plants that don't require much attention alive, but orchids are sort of the opposite of that. So the orchids unfortunately didn't quite make it.
That was one of the fascinating things we found in researching Rex Stout, is that he basically took 3 to 6 months out of his year every single year just to tend to his gardens rather than actually dealing with his writing career, which is a luxury I'm sure many authors would love to have these days.
Like he certainly, I think he had a pretty good setup, did Rex Stout. Sort of able to do what he liked, I think. But and again, the sort of, I really liked how the brownstone is described in the books. You've sort of got the working area, like where the office and stuff is, and then there's the kitchen, obviously, and then, this whole upper floor just devoted to orchids. It's, it's amazing.
It's fantastic.
It'd be great to be able to go and visit,
It's indulgent, to say the least, which is fantastic.
We definitely did miss out on a bit of the character of the setting of Nero Wolfe by picking TooMany Cooks, where it's one of the few books where he's actually outside the house.
True. Yeah.
But there's always a good bit of fun to be had there when you go back to the more standard run-of-the-mill Rex Stout novels.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm a little disappointed we didn't get to meet Fritz in this novel. I've heard nothing but good things about him.
Yeah, Fritz is a great character. I mean, it's sort of interesting because, again, when I reread TooMany Cooks, like I really like all the characters, but I'm like, well, there's no women, or the women are, pretty much non-existent as characters. And obviously there's some issues with race, so it's sort of interesting, I guess, to see it through those lenses while I still really enjoy the characters that do exist there. Like Archie Goodwin's a fantastic character, obviously, and all the Saul Panzer and the other detectives that help out that, again, weren't really too much in TooMany Cooks, but are in much more in some of the other stories. They're great. They're fun characters as well. It's a great universe that he was able to create.
Oh, yeah. Just before we got you on the line, we were actually speaking about some of the, racial difficulties in this novel, and it's kind of interesting. One of our friends of the show, Dr. Mike Grost, always says that this novel does a particularly good job of its time for actually stepping out of the norm and, trying to show that it isn't okay to use these terms, and our heroes are always trying to do something different. So, even as difficult as it may be as a modern reader to go back and be like, we can't touch that. It is still good to see that there is some, social progress behind the writing of such things. Yeah,
for sure. And obviously it could be 1,000 times worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just that sort of cringy moment when you get to some of it, you're like, oh, that's right. I remember now. Oh, that's a bit uncomfortable. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kirsten, for joining us here on Death of the Reader, discussing TooMany Cooks, Rex Stout, Nero Wolfe cooking, and all things delicious and delectable. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is Death of the Reader. See you in the next part.
You're listening to Death of the Reader on 2SER. We are flexing herds. We are discussing TooMany Cooks by Rex Stout, and I'm ready, herds.
What?
Last week I was confused.
Damn right you were. You had no clue what was going on.
Well, that's not true. I had half an idea who was going
You
on.
had 0.3% of an idea. So
we are discussing chapters 7 to 13 inclusive of TooMany Cooks. Last week I thought it was Dina Laszio and an accomplice, but I couldn't quite pin down who it was. But I reckon I've got it this time.
Really?
Yes, I do, herds.
Who's your culprit then? Just lay it on the table right now.
My culprit, my murderer in this one, is Raymond Liggett.
What? But he was in New York.
He was, or so we were told.
What?
And his accomplice, Dina Laszio, who I think is actually the one pulling the strings.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Think she's some kind of criminal mastermind?
Absolutely.
That's what that scene was when she was like, oh, my poor husband is going to be murdered.
Yeah.
With poison. And I found poison in the salt shaker.
It's a classic trope
Is
to
it?
have the
Is
guilty
it?
person come up and try and assuade guilt onto
Well,
somebody else.
They did bring that up. They did say, maybe she's trying to draw attention away from herself by actually, prophesizing the murder. But,
Prophesizing.
That's basically what she did. Prophesizing. That's the word.
Yes. Now, I think the most important thing with Dina Laszio here is a line that we
She's
get
innocent.
from her in chapter 9, where she says that Vukic had forgiven what Nero Wolfe could not. Which, if we look at what Vukic actually says in earlier chapters, does not seem to be the case.
Oh, interesting.
He's not as openly bitter as Nero Wolfe is, but I don't think he's quite forgiven Dina Laszio for what she's done. Which, in case you are not entirely caught up on the book, is that she abandoned Marko Vukic for our dead man.
It's true.
Philip Laszio.
She's a bit of a swamp woman, as Archie would put it. I don't know entirely what that means, but Archie doesn't like her.
I'm concerned now that we're going to have to edit that out, but it's too late because it's already gone to air and we're going to be in trouble. Dina Laszio, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Suspicious as all get out.
I don't think so. But let's go with your theory for now, Flex. Let's say
all right,
Dina Laszio has it out for Vukic, has it out for Laszio. She's willing to murder her own husband. Why have you summoned this other gentleman to the stand?
Well, okay. Raymond Liggett, I said last week that I would not be happy with this man being the culprit.
Yeah, I don't know why you flipped around so suddenly. That makes no sense.
I'm still not happy.
Okay.
I'm not happy.
Good. None of us are happy then. None of us happy here.
So the main thing that tipped me over the edge was actually, interestingly enough, a line from my second pick for killer, which was Alberto Malfi. Alberto Malfi and Raymond Liggett have come to town together, have been speaking in suspicious, strange, cruel ways, talking about stabbing people, which admittedly everyone in the book has been doing.
I was going to say, everybody's talking about stabbing people, stabbing pigs, feeding them nuts so they're nice and juicy and delicious. Everybody's talking about eating and stabbing.
Everyone is talking about eating and stabbing. But I think that there is a particular malice to the way that Alberto Malfi and Raymond Liggett come in and talk about stabbing Corsicans. And here's the line that pushed me over the edge, Ben.
A woman like her doesn't have friends, only slaves.
We also, in that same scene, find out that apparently Dina Laszio had induced a cocaine habit in Vukic. And I was a little torn, Herds. I was a little torn between Alberto Malfi and Raymond Liggett, but this line pushed me over the edge because, Herds, if it is true that Dina Laszio has only slaves and not lovers, then it would mean that the culprit was probably one of those slaves. And if it was Malfi, would he have the self-awareness to say such a thing? I think not.
Well, this is an intriguing little argument that you bring to the table, Flex, but I don't know. I feel like that doesn't make, a huge amount of sense. I don't know. Why would Raymond Liggett even show up the day after the murder? By the way, wasn't he supposed to be in New York?
He was supposed to be in New York. However, everyone that says that is the case is working for him.
Oh, interesting.
No one can prove otherwise. We also have a line where, in an unrelated incident, Nero and Archie are talking about how
He can't be in two places at once. Even a jury wouldn't believe that.
methinks this is Rex Stout trying to be clever.
Trying
to be clever.
He's a clever boy.
He is a clever boy. And I don't know, that line to me when I went over it, I thought to myself, this seems like the truth being put in our face but twisted around to try bamboozle us. So that's the theory I'm banking on.
I find it interesting that you've gone after Raymond Liggett and even Albert, because there's another character that's been mentioned in this novel.
Yes, who's
who
that?
Who is also supposedly in New York. And this is why I question, why would Raymond even feel the need to show up? If he's done the killing, why stick around even?
I will tell you the answer to that question after you've posed this theory, because I don't want to cancel out what you're about to say.
You're going to try to anyway, but we all know.
We all try.
We all know I'm right here. Look, Herds' track record has been at least 10,000%. 10,000%.
0 points.
I want to check the record here, okay?
0 points.
Now, anyway, so there is a character who's been mentioned a couple of times. One, Zalotta of Tarragona. And what's more, before you call nonsense on this, because I have a legitimate backing to this theory.
Nonsense.
He was the first character mentioned as having a death or a killing wish for Mr. Laszio.
And you know what, Herds?
He's mentioned by Barin in the opening chapter.
And you know what, Herds?
He's the first person mentioned.
I thought
Flex?
that was going to end up being it, and I was going to be real mad. I was reading that opening chapter back again, and I thought to myself, Rex Stout, what are you doing here? Have you put your culprit in this book in a line in the opening chapter, but then not actually had him appear in the entire book?
What if he's masquerading as someone else?
That was actually my theory.
Yeah,
dude. That's
my theory too.
Man, maybe I'm just wrong. But
no.
No, Herds, no. And
I
here's
don't
why.
think so.
Here's why.
Why, Flex?
Because
Educate us.
we get Alberto Malfi talking about the path of murder that leads to the head chef position at the Churchill. He says that as much as he would like to have that position, he would much rather it go to the man who taught him, Jerome Barin. But you know what? He says he wouldn't murder Barin for that position, but you know what he would do?
What?
Allow him to be framed for murder.
Ooh, that's an interesting theory.
That's an interesting theory, isn't it just? Isn't it just? Also, we have all of these scenes talking about all of the terrible things and disgrace that has come upon the Churchill Hotel because of Philip Laszio's actions. And what were all of those scenes for, if not to provide motive for the killer? Here's the thing, is that everyone gives those opinions. Everyone says that Philip Laszio has done terrible things. But you know the only man in the book who is connected to all of them other than Philip Laszio himself? Raymond Liggett.
Wow. This is some hot takes I'm hearing right here.
It's some pretty hot takes,
And
Hertz.
all after the ceiling of Rognon al Montagne. No Montagne.
While we were off air in the break there, Herds went to translate this time.
Can't help me.
It means kidney in the mountains.
Yes.
It sounded like Google Translate was having a stroke.
As we all know, kidneys in the mountains, that's where they taste the best. Get yourself some kidneys, cut them out, take them to the mountains.
Once
enjoy.
again, we've struck the old foul pass.
Foul Pass, that's the one.
Or is it Falk's Pass? I don't even remember
Falk's
the joke.
Pass was the original joke, sir. That's all right.
If only we had writers on this show to make sure our jokes were consistent, Herds.
Well, you know what? In the future, maybe.
Well, I
See.
guess we do
Once
have
go
Rex
global.
Stout. He is technically a writer.
It's true. Really, every writer that we follow.
Rex Stout, you have to hold us
know.
accountable, sir.
Yeah.
He's probably spinning in his grave over this.
This is why we don't cover living writers. This is why we don't. Because then they'd be able to control us. They'd be like, you can't say that.
That's
That's not how that's
dangerous.
pronounced.
That's
It's pronounced
dangerous.
Nero Wolfe.
But yes, I don't know, Herds. I'm still very scared. I'm very scared
Good.
that
You should be.
that Rex Stout, who supposedly does not believe in the fair play of the murder mystery genre in the same way that our beloved Ronald Knox and SS Van Dyne did, I'm scared that this man is about to drop a culprit on me who is not featured once in the story except
What
by
if it-
mention.
What if it is a lot
I'm
of, I'm
scared.
just saying. It's a lot of my.
But I'm
gotta-
going to say
done.
this, Herds,
Yeah.
that if Rex Stout were to do such a thing, if I were to lose points over someone not playing the game fairly, so be it.
Okay.
So be it,
Okay.
Herds.
If this is the hill you're going to die on,
This
I'm
is
okay
the
with
hill
it.
I will die
I'm okay
on.
with it. It's
I
fine.
will pick the fair play option, even if it means I lose one singular point.
I can't believe you're like taking the high ground on this. You say this like you don't always give me the most complicated, most skewed detective novels there are. Just because I enjoy them more, you're a monster.
Listen,
a true monster.
you
The
know,
antagonist of this show.
it's just we have to have some conflict on this show, Herds.
I mean, we always have conflict.
And if it means that I have to keep picking books that are way too complicated for you to solve, and you have to
Thank
keep
you.
picking books that aren't fair enough for me to solve,
That's it.
you know, eventually someone's going to win this murder mystery game. And so far, I'm in the lead, Herds.
That's right.
The only way that this murder mystery
Sean.
game is ending up in
With
your
Sean.
favor is going to be some real dodgy picks on novels.
Let's do it. That's the plan. Well, you had to pick the dodgy one for me. Unfortunately, that's how we've rigged this game.
we'll-
entirely in your favor.
We'll talk a bit more about what novel we're going to pick very shortly on the show. I'm very excited for this one. I think you'll actually enjoy this one a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, I hope you enjoy all of my picks, even if they are, you know, swayed in my favor.
yeah. I mean, obviously. Yeah, we'll be talking about that next week. It's going to be good stuff.
But the thing I wanted to touch on right now with the fair play of this novel, Herds, was the excellence with which the story puts its puzzle into the story. I don't think any of the books that we've covered on the show so far have created and obfuscated enough mystery without just being openly evasive about it. This book always feels like something is going on other than the puzzle, and I love that.
It feels very natural.
Yeah.
It's very different from the last novel where we just had witnesses, going in and out of the courthouse effectively.
Yeah.
We weren't calling people away from what they were doing. We were, calling upon these characters while they have stuff going on.
Mhm.
It feels like these characters have lives, and there's an excuse for why they have the time to come and see us because we're on a holiday at this spa place.
Yeah.
Like there's fictional reasoning for why we're able to have these conversations with these characters and grab Leo and grab, Raymond's going to call on Nero in his apartment. And that's the other thing. Having all the characters actually go to the detective.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I think perhaps the scene that stood out most to me in this whole sequence so far, from chapters 1 to 13, is when Nero Wolfe gets shot. Because it's a scene that opens up and it spends the first half of the scene them just talking about food, reading over a speech, and I'm
Yes.
sitting there like, what is happening?
What is this false sense of security I'm being lulled into?
I mentioned earlier on the show that I'd originally read through that in a bit of a rush and not actually realize what was going on until my second time through. Because I'd been reading that scene and I was like, okay, whatever, they're talking about food, skip. Oh, there's a bullet in the book? Okay.
How'd that get there?
How did that get there?
Yeah.
But upon actually reading that scene, I think that there was a beautiful elegance to that, where it was a scene where it disarms you. It's like, yeah, they're talking about food, having a good time, talking about a little bit about the case as they go, a couple of questions, and then the gun comes in through the window, and it's going to help them solve the case. It's beautiful.
Well, it also motivates them, right? It
Yeah,
motivates Wolf.
absolutely.
Yeah, that to me is the biggest draw of that scene.
Yeah.
Is that Wolf, up until this point, has said, I'm doing this because of my obligations to my host. I'm doing this because the police won't let me go to bed. I'm doing this because I want to help her in. But now it is personal, and that is the driving force to push into the third act.
And normally this is the kind of thing that I would put in the first part of the show, where we talk about the construction of the novel as a story. But I think that it's important to put here when we're talking about the puzzle and how we solve it, because it demonstrates very clearly how you can still have a puzzle while having a story, which I think is something that a lot of the books we've covered so far haven't done as effectively as this.
No, for sure. Shout out to the Detective Club.
Yeah.
They tried their best.
They tried their best.
Oh, dear. But yeah.
Either way, Herds, it's time to move on.
Yeah, you got to lock in your answer. Move on to the third part.
I Herds.
Going with Raymond?
I'm going to go with Raymond. Raymond is our killer. Dean Laszio is pulling the strings. Dean Laszio went out into that open parlor, put on the radio to disguise from one Raymond Liggett sneaking in the back door, putting on his blackface and stabbing Philip Laszio in the back.
I have one question for you. Now, this isn't for bonus marks. I'm just curious if you have a reason for this. Where did Raymond Liggett get all those resources from to blackface and pretend to be a servant?
You know what? I hadn't honestly really thought about that. I
Because that doesn't make any sense.
I will, you know what, Herds?
Yeah.
There you go. That's my failing for this episode.
Got him.
I failed last episode in being able to pin down a culprit. I failed this time in being able to pin down why.
Yeah.
I think that I'm collapsing under the pressure here for once.
I think so too. I think I finally got you on the ropes.
Oh, no.
This is it. This is how I win.
Here's the thing: is
With
that of all of the
points.
problems to have, it's not a big one. I don't think it's too
Just
far-fetched
how
to
they
say.
accomplish the crime, the primary methodology.
No.
They would
Herds.
obscure
It's a
their
hotel. It's a hotel with dozens of workers
No.
who probably all have uniforms that he could grab. It
Of
was
his
already
size
said
and-
that there would absolutely Herds. Have you been into a professional kitchen?
At least once.
They just have uniforms for days. What do you think they make the food from?
The uniforms?
Yeah.
They make the food out of the uniforms?
Absolutely.
That's messed up.
Well, it's the most affordable way to make food
Well,
in this day and age
that's
where we
right.
have food synthesizers and...
I was going to
Wait,
say.
sorry, no, that's the next novel we're covering.
Oh my.
Oopsie-daisies.
That's foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing in my radio cast. You betcha.
Well, either way, Herds, it's been an absolute pleasure almost losing to you for once, but not quite.
Almost losing. I think you have lost. We'll see next week.
We will see,
Next
Herds.
time.
This has been Death of the Reader. We are discussing Too Many Cooks by Rex Stout. We will be talking next week, chapters 14 to the end of the story, and we will see you then. And that was part 2 of Too Many Cooks by Rex Stout. We are Flex and Herds. This is the Death of the Reader extended cut.
We've almost closed the wrap. The chicken wrap is closing on us.
Chicken wrap? I don't
It's the
remember there
third
being
portion.
a chicken wrap in this story.
We've had the bottom of the burger, we had the chicken stuffing, and now we're closing the wrap that is Too Many Cooks.
Wait, so it was a burger base, chicken, and then a wrap for the top?
Yes.
It's horrifying, but kind of enticing.
You can give it a go. You know, what's the worst that could happen? A burger wrap. I'm coining that turn.
It would
Hollywood, call me.
It would
I
have
don't know why I
been-
want Hollywood, but
Yeah, I mean, it would have been easier than a turducken sausage.
I agree. I agree.
Do you reckon it would have been easier than kidney in the mountains?
I'd like to go to the mountains and eat a kidney there. That sounds easy.
Like a fresh kidney? Like uncooked, raw kidney?
Like, I mean, have you seen that one movie, The Revenant, where he like goes up in the mountain and he eats? I think it's a liver in that. But point is, you go out, you hunt a buffalo, you get the kidney out, and you just eat it raw in the mountains, and it's delicious.
I see. You take the meaning of kidney beans a bit too literally.
Yes. What do you think came first, the bean or the kidney? Definitely the kidney. But yeah, in the final part of today's extended cut, we'll be chatting about speeches.
Yes.
Lots of expositions. One character who is literally an exposition machine, and we love him for it. And the final solution. And of course, we're discussing fair play along with that.
Did Rex Stout finally manage to turn around and convince me it was a fair play story?
Maybe.
You'll just have to find out. We also spoke with 9 food and wine writer Callan Boys.
Callan Boys.
Callan Boys is one of the most entertaining characters you'll see around 2SER. And my goodness, I could go on for hours about the stories this man has told me, but I think that perhaps one of the best ones I've heard is in this episode.
Oh, don't tell me that. We have to listen.
You have to listen to it.
Wait on in.
I'll tell you though, Herds, we might be taking a detour down to a fast food chain once this mic switches off.
Oh, all right. Let's do it.
This is the Death of the Reader extended cut. We are flexing Herds. And right now is chapters 14 to 17 of TooMany Cooks by Rex Stout.
Mm-hmm.
You're listening to Death of the Reader on 2SER. We are flexing Herds. This is your Murder Mystery World Tour on 2SER. And Herds, I am ecstatic to say we are at the end of TooMany Cooks.
Look.
And would you look at this?
I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say. You're going to say you were right. You're going to say you get points. You get points. You get all the points. Take all of them. Throw them.
I will.
Throw at this man's face.
I will take all of these points,
all right,
Herds.
whatever, dude. It's fine.
It is a pleasure to be standing here before you, champion once again of this murder mystery game.
It's garbage.
Oh.
Why don't even do this show? Come on. There is no fair chance. There is no fair play in this mystery.
That's all right. That's all right. Herds, I'll give you the honor of telling us about the novel.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we're doing TooMany Cooks. This is part 3. This is chapters 14 to the end of TooMany Cooks by Rex Stout, featuring Nero Wolfe, our oversized armchair detective.
Yes.
In this part, we will be talking about the final part of the mystery, whether it was fair, whether it wasn't, and all sorts of fun stuff that goes along with that. So strap in for a good time.
Let's get into it. I'm very excited because not only, Herds, was this me being proven right once again.
Uh-huh.
I can't take myself seriously being that narcissistic. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You well. I know you well enough.
So I think that the fantastic thing about this section of the book is that it's so short, but so much happens.
Yes. Yeah.
We go through so many different phases of the investigation so quickly, but none of them catch you blindsided.
Yep. It's a sprint, but it all builds on stuff that we've seen in the past. I'm particularly thinking of the telegram, which is such a strange part of this novel if you are not paying attention and trying to actively figure out what everything means. We're presented with this cascade of clues and revelations upon clues, and a man who is Saul Panzer, who is apparently from the previous books, and he is nothing if not an exposition machine. He just churns out fact after fact after fact, and this is intentional as well.
Yeah.
This isn't a poor bit of writing. This isn't too much information being thrown at us. This is explicitly Nero Wolfe's purpose. After he's exposed Raymond Leggett as our culprit, as our criminal, and he says, "What? You can't pin this on me. What are you trying to do, you sly?" And then he says, "Saul Panzer, please take the stage.
Yes.
Would you speak to Raymond? Speak to Leggett."
It's hard to comment on the role of Saul Panzer because we haven't read the previous novels in the series.
But the impression that we get of him is phenomenal.
Yeah, he seems like the walking summary scene.
Yes.
You know how we have that scene at the end of the novel, which we do get in this one, where the detective sits everyone down and says, "And you were the culprit."
Yeah.
Saul Panzer is that scene with legs.
Yeah. It's excellent. He's a good parallel to Archie Goodwin, who is the literal legs of a detective.
Yes, exactly.
And now we have the legs of the solution. Oh, I love it so much. There's so many good, tropes given personification in this novel.
Yeah, no, it's
beautiful.
really excellent. And let's talk about that telegram, because it's such a weird part of the story. You aren't even really told when or why the telegram is coming in excessive detail.
Yes.
But then once you get it, you're told exactly what you should have been paying attention to.
This actually ties in really well to the unique perspective we're given as Archie Goodwin. Compare this directly to S.S. Van Dyne's work, where we are given a character in fiction to follow, but we just kind of follow detective. Archie Goodwin has explicit scenes where he is not in the same room as Nero, and Nero can act independently. Trying to follow Nero's thought process in that instance is more difficult because we're not looking for his perspective. We're not actually seeing everything that Nero Wolfe is doing, which is a particularly unique take on the genre, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is also fun to actually have, part of the solution come from someone other than just the Übermensch of the detective. Because typically when we get to these points in the novels, we have, the detectives solved everything. They just tell us what's going on. And it doesn't feel like the same sort of team effort that we have going on here. And I think that Nero Wolfe surrounding himself as the armchair detective with a team is an important part of his character because otherwise he would be very bland.
This is true. The armchair detective is the most kind of self-indulgent form of detective, and obviously it's played on in the kind of character that he is. But you could very easily just say, well, the armchair detective sits in his room and everything comes to him. But that would be so boring. We need to have action. We need to have romance. We need to have people with ginger ale being poured into their laps. And that's why we have Archie.
Yeah. And then we also get back to the more, SS Van Dyne clinical detective sort of thing when Nero Wolfe tries to trick, and successfully, mind you, Dina Laszio into unveiling what's happened. Because it's become so obvious through the entire novel that Dina Laszio is involved very closely with the crime.
Yeah.
And the way that Archie and Nero slowly press her to finally confess is a very, very elegantly written passage.
Yes. The psychology of the scene. Because we could very easily have just had, Rex Stout could have just said, well, the criminals are Dina Laszio and Raymond Leggett. Clap 'em in irons, boys, and off they go.
Yeah.
But he spins this because we have a character who has done a murder and a character who's an accomplice. And so he presents this dynamic between them that is really only ever off camera before this scene. Dina Laszio is brought to the forefront and Wolfe says even, if you tell us a version of the truth that suits yourself, perhaps, you won't be tried for murder. Perhaps you won't get the ultimate punishment. And she completely falls for it.
Yeah, it's excellent.
Yeah.
And I think it's also a very important thing in the realism of detective fiction to make sure that we actually have a confession of some sort, some evidence that will actually have someone clapped in irons.
Yeah, this is the thing. Raymond doesn't get a chance to because he won't. He won't admit to the crime. He says, even as he's having the handcuffs put on him, he says, Tolman, this is going to be the end of your career. If you go through with this, that's the end for you. You're going to regret this.
I'm a very wealthy man.
Exactly.
You can't stop me.
I'm a very powerful person. I have powerful friends out there. I have the Illuminati somewhere. And Wolfe's like, well, there's more than one person in this crime.
Do you reckon the chef Illuminati is a real thing?
Obviously. I mean, what do you think this whole 15 chef thing is a couple for? Obviously, they're all working together.
Are you saying to me that the 15 Masters is a real thing in the real world?
Maybe it is. We just don't know about
goodness.
it.
Where do I sign up?
Are you that good of a chef?
No.
Oh.
But I can learn, damn it.
This is true.
If I can master murder mysteries this well, then I can obviously become that good of a chef.
You are such a narcissist. This is just your ego knows no bounds.
Absolutely none.
I don't know how I can fit in the room with you and your ego. My goodness.
It's so spacious in here too.
It is a nice room. There is a really obvious moment to me. Well, there's a couple of moments where Leggett is showing his guilt, and it's when he's trying to effectively bribe Wolfe.
Yes.
In chapter 5, he tries initially to persuade Wolfe to bring Burin onto his staff as a chef, and he'll offer him a commission fee. And and that, that's pretty whatever. That's like background politics of the chefs and whatever that's happening there. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the murder of the story.
Nothing at all.
But he comes back again and offers Nero Wolfe $50,000 in cash.
$50,000
in cash.
Is that more than 11,000 francs?
I have no clue. But
we should probably have checked that.
Back in the day, I know that this was a lot more than 50,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Inflation. This is a huge amount of money in cash. And if there was ever a scene to say, I have done a murder, please stop investigating my murder and please focus on this Burin thing instead, that's the scene.
Yeah.
I find it particularly interesting. It's just a huge red flag, and a very human one as well from Raymond.
I mean, one of the reasons I didn't suspect that initial scene back in chapter 5 was because, it was it felt very throwaway at the time. He was a character that basically just came in for that scene and didn't show up again. And while it was obvious that he had some connection to Laszio because it was his chef and Baron, I thought that Baron had been so obviously framed that it wouldn't make sense that it was Leggett who had committed everything. And it wasn't until later when we found out that Malfi didn't like Baron getting that opportunity that it really settled in what those clues meant. And I really liked, and this is something I know you love about Murder Mysteries, Herds, it was a scene that brilliantly recontextualized a previous scene.
You have me right on the money. I was just about to say that. We have a scene where, Leggett tries to offer an amount of money to the detective to get him to bugger off. He tries to kill the detective. And then he offers even more money. Like, if you put this into perspective of him as the culprit, that progression of action, the desperation where he's begun with this lie of, I was in New York and, maybe if you help me out here, maybe don't worry about the murder so much. Just get on your train, go home. I know you're only going to be here for 2 days. If I give you a distraction, maybe that'll be fine. But the logical progression that he goes through of getting more and more desperate as time goes on, knowing that he has this time limit that Wolfe has even put on himself, is exciting to watch. In
the context of the traditional Ronald Knoxian rule that the culprit must be introduced in the early part of the story, technically Liggett fits in. Technically Liggett fits in. I wasn't particularly happy with it, but I think that the execution with which his character was presented through the whole of the novel means I am a lot less upset than I otherwise would be about the lack of conventional fair play in this story.
Yeah, which I'm okay with. And as we've said, this is something that Rex Stout was all about.
Yeah.
Pun, rhyme intended. He was very much more about the drama and the suspense and the action, the romance. He's an incurable romantic. Less so about the fair play of the detective mystery genre.
Which, as we said on the previous episode, I do have a problem with, but I think that...
I don't. I love it.
Yeah, but I think that going in so close-minded that I can't accept a well-constructed story like this would be foolish.
Sure.
My initial reaction was still like, really, it was the guy that wasn't there at all? But as we got through, and as you say, as we saw that escalation, that brilliant background psychology of characters is one of my favorite parts of background characters in murder mystery, or just stories in general. I know we saw the latest Spider-Man movie, which is a bit of a strange example to bring up, perhaps. And Herds,
you're pandering to me. You're
absolutely loved this one background character.
You're trying to soften the blow from taking my points, but I'm okay with it. Keep going.
Yeah, he absolutely loved this one background character because he was such an excellent parallel for what was going on in the main arc of the story, and it really scaled down and humanized the main complications of the story.
I won't spoil this character or anything about them, but they only have about, I would say, a minute total of functional screen time when they're like the focus. So they just put these little tiny details. They're just snapshots, but they're so punchy and well done. Anyway, this isn't a Spider-Man podcast, but if it was, I give that character 10 out of 10.
I think it's kind of similar to when you look at, model making in movies, and the model makers always put in these tiny details that mean nothing to the audience, but mean a lot to them, and that's what makes the story feel authentic. A lot of these background characters in this novel, especially Miss Coyne, especially a lot of the other chefs, even though in the end they don't actually have that much to do with it, all of their emotions are used effectively to convey what is actually going on in the story without demonstrating to you explicitly that it is the core of the story. And I think that is beautiful.
Well, none of the chefs actually end up doing the deed, which is kind of funny when we take the premise of there are 15 chefs and one of them dies. Surely it's one of the other chefs. Not at all. It's great.
Yeah. And to some extent that may have been a bit too obvious, but we'll talk about that coming up a bit later in the show. And of course, Herds, before we wrap this section, I do have to say how much I love the actual roundup scene at the end of this story.
Yeah.
We've been building up Nero Wolfe's speech to the 15 Masters for this whole novel, and we knew that it was going to be, he was going to give the speech, get in a train and get out of there, and that was our time limit.
Yeah.
I really should have seen it coming that he was going to use his speech to actually call out the culprit.
Yeah.
But the fact that I didn't almost made it so much better when I was like, oh my God, it's happening. He's doing the thing.
It's so appropriate. He doesn't need to do the usual detective roundup. He doesn't want to go to the effort of collecting everyone after the speech.
Yeah, everyone's already there. Why not use it? It's so good. And just the way that the scene is presented, where we've been hyping up this speech and, there's a bullet hole through the speech and we've had all of this lead up to it and it just drops the speech and gives us the criminal.
Yeah, we don't even get to hear the full speech, which is a little, you know what? I'd love to hear the full speech if we could find that somewhere.
Part of me feels like it was probably written but cut by an editor, but you know what? I'm okay with that.
That's all right.
I love this sequence.
At least we get Wolfe's brutal cornering of the suspect and Saul's artful exposition.
Yeah.
That's what I'm calling it.
I think if I had to pick a book out of any of the ones that we've covered on this show as the most accessible murder mystery, it would be a very tough call between this one and The Three Taps.
I was going to say The Three Taps has a beautiful sense of humor.
Yeah. And for a lot of the same reasons too. I really think that if you love murder mysteries or if you are not so sure about murder mysteries, this is either the good one to shill out to your friends or an excellent one to get started with.
That said, this one would definitely make the better movie adaptation, which is worth looking into.
Maybe we should. Maybe that's what Death of the Reader can become.
A movie, a murder movie?
Exactly.
We can become a movie murder mystery.
The gimmick just becomes that you and I kill each other every
Michael
week
Myers.
and make like a 45-minute TV episode about it.
That'd be perfect.
But
Can we
it's
do that?
the only people on the cast is you and me. Everyone else is just sock puppets.
I think I could do that. I'll be honest. I feel like I had the skill set to do enough terrible voices that we could get away with that.
Yeah, that sounds possible.
I'm playing Wolf though. I want to say it right now. Nobody can be the larger-than-life wolf better than me.
Absolutely. I want to be Archie. There's no problems here. This is perfect.
Perfect. We were in agreement
Well,
there.
yeah, we'll see you next week on
TV. I'll see you on set. Let's go. Let's go.
This is Death of the Reader. We are talking Too Many Cooks by Rex Stout. And we will be back in just a moment. You're listening to Death of the Reader on 2SER. We are Flex and Hertz, and today we're joined by Callan Boys, national food and wine writer for Fairfax, and a food traveller after the heart of our dear Archie Goodwin, our Watson in this murder mystery game this week. Callan, welcome to the show.
Hello.
So, Callan, food is often a matter of passion for us, be it vehemently defending our favourite restaurants or sticking doggedly to the undeniable belief that everyone's mother is the best chef in the world. How can we safely discuss food without incurring a dagger in our back?
Have a very good legal team behind you at the Sydney Morning Herald. That's a good one. That's what I find works. I also find it works really, really well to make sure you always say tastes like, reminds me of. It could be that kind of thing. You don't want to say anything that's too certain. Otherwise, you'll have restaurant legal teams come down you like a ton of bricks. That's if you give negative reviews.
Right.
Which we don't really do that often at, well, I don't say Fairfax Media anymore. Channel 9 is our new overlords. Or not even Channel 9, just 9.
This is true.
Yes. So it's very rare we do negative reviews because we want to encourage people to go out and eat. If a restaurant's incredibly bad, we just kind of don't write about it. We'd rather celebrate the good than throw shade on the bad. That being said, if something's really calling out for attention, like there was a restaurant today that opened in Melbourne, or it opened last week, but we reviewed it today in Melbourne for The Age, and I think it's just called Pink, the restaurant, and everything's pink. And we scored that. The Melbourne reviewer scored it 8 out of 20, which has been the lowest score we've done in a Fairfax publication in a long, long time.
Was the meat pink?
I haven't read the review yet. I just saw the score and I clicked on it. I was like, that'll be when I get home after deadline. I'm going to read that. But yeah, there was a lot of horrible looking things in there. Anyway, but look, you just don't be too much of a wanker about it. And at the end of the day, you're talking about food. You're not trying to solve the world's problems. Although some chefs might think they are. So,
well.
Yeah.
Do you often find that that's something that you have to keep in mind when you're writing reviews? Like if you've eaten a dish at a restaurant that you weren't as much of a fan of, will you leave that out of the review if you think it's an outlier or?
Yeah, totally. Look, I've been to a lot of restaurants in Australia many times, and a lot of the best ones, they all have their bad days. The job of a critic is to say, what is this restaurant trying to do and how well do they do it? So if the overall product is pretty bloody good, then that's what you need to talk about. If you've got one waiter that might drop some cutlery or splash some wine on your shirt or something like that, well, you kind of leave that stuff out unless you can tell there's a systemic problem across it. So if one dish is under-seasoned, yeah, maybe you can bring that out and say, well, you know, the terrine probably could have done with more salt. But yeah, you don't really want to take a whole review down just because, you know, something missed a bit of bloody aioli on the side.
Well, let's say that someone did miss a bit of bloody aioli on the side and then someone is found with a dagger in their back in the kitchen with aioli on it. How do you as a reviewer treat that?
I haven't dealt with too many deaths in the kitchen. Well, no, I haven't. I can't remember the last time a Sydney chef was murdered in their restaurant.
No chefs have come after you wielding their kitchen knives, their steak knives, trying to hunt you down for giving you a bad review? No, nothing like that?
No, I'm usually pretty good. And but I've definitely had some shade thrown at me online every now and again. I remember the time I most got in trouble of Sydney's chef community when I said the third best chicken sandwich in Sydney was the Zinger at KFC.
Oh, no.
That's bound to raise some
and I
Spicy
stand by it.
take.
I think I still stand by that claim today. I haven't gone out and tested a lot of chicken sandwiches in the last 2 or 3 years since I wrote that. But, there was a dour time there for chicken burgers and chicken sandwiches in Sydney, and that was kind of the best. It's like, why can a 15-year-old kid make a better bloody chicken sandwich than half the chefs in Sydney? And I say chicken sandwich because I believe that a burger needs to have meat on it. Ground beef, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else is a sandwich. And I know I sound like a wanker saying that, and I apologize.
That's all right. You're a food writer. That's the job. Now, you mentioned kind of the egos of some chefs and how you scarred them with KFC. Too Many Cooks, our book this week, is full to the brim with foodie egos from Rex Stout's 15 Masters of the Cooking World. Is the food world overflowing with such egos, or is it just a thing of the past, or was it just a concoction of our author this week, Rex Stout?
No, there is a lot of egos out there. They're getting better at hiring marketing and PR departments to kind of tell them what to do when they talk to people like me. But I still hear some pretty heinous stories from behind the chef's line of what goes on in kitchens. But look, it's probably better. It definitely is better than what it was 5 or 10 years ago, definitely better than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. That boys culture, that brigade culture is slowly coming out of kitchens. But look, it's still certainly there and in a lot of places. But look, you've got open kitchens now in a lot of places. That was never really a thing, say 25 years ago. So you've really got to learn to respect your staff and kind of put your ego away and just talk to people in a nice, calm, serene manner about what they might be doing wrong, and then give them a good bollocking after service instead when the customers have gone home. But look, with chefs and ego these days, social media has opened up a whole bunch of opportunities to get out there and see what people are doing and learn from that and say like, oh, okay, well, I've been doing it this way for such a long time. This guy in like Copenhagen or this guy in Brazil or wherever it might be, which I had no access to that before. And I can currently see what's happening in real time in those restaurants all around the world. I think that's great to kind of dig bits and pieces of influence.
Yeah.
Without stealing dishes. That's one thing that chefs do get quite upset about.
Really?
Is if you steal a dish, like blatantly. And I am damn sure that there is a number of chefs, and I won't name them, in Australia that go through like cookbooks from like weird Scandinavian countries and that kind of thing, and just kind of like take, bits and pieces here and there and think no one's ever going to know.
Yeah. That's just like one of the main chefs in our story. Jerome Berin goes to great lengths to defend his recipe for, are you going to try to pronounce this one, Hertz?
Saucisse minuit.
Yeah.
I hope.
Hey, you've practiced.
I have. I've been learning since the first episode, my friend.
That's great.
How was I out of 10?
You're about 9.5, sir.
Oh, it's the highest praise I can ask for.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
No, you go. Yeah, no, you're right. One of the things, though, I tell you what, because you don't deal with chefs in restaurants too often when it comes to ego, waiter ego. That's an issue.
Ooh.
And pronunciation is my big pet peeve. It's when and especially wine, that's another one. Like if I went with my dad and he's like, he feels a bit like nervous and anxious being in a restaurant, and he asks for the cabinet, say instead of cabernet, and then you've got the waiter that comes back to him and says, yes, the cabernet, sir. And then dad's with his family, he feels embarrassed, and it's just not good. And, I write about this all the time, but it still keeps happening. And so food pronunciation, especially French restaurants, but Chinese, everything, like it can be pretty bloody hard. So I think a good waiter should not want to have that almost narcissistic streak to show like, oh, this is how you actually pronounce it. Yeah.
Is there kind of a rivalry between the waiters of the foodie world? Are there like cults that form up around these waiters, or is that kind of a self-important thing that's internalized?
Not really. There is around bartenders. The world of bartending is a very, very different beast to all this, and that gets very culty and very incestuous. But the world of waiting, not so much. They're all pretty good friends at that top level, and they all kind of work around different places. You might do 2 years here, 3 years there, and then go back and you might have some people that stick around with the restaurant 30, 40 years. There was one of the great waiters of the world, and I can't remember his name, this Italian bloke. We did a story on him recently, and we ran his top 10 tips for being a waiter. And my favorite tip back to the point, don't embarrass the customer, was the customer's always right. My name is Diego, but if he thinks my name's Dave, well, my name's Dave for that night in front of that table. I'm not going to correct him on that. My other favorite one from that waiter was always read the paper each morning, because you never know what your customers are going to want to talk about, whether it's sport or politics or just the tabloids. Anyway, we digress slightly. No, there's no one really in service that I can think of that has that kind of cult following like chefs do, because, chefs are on television a lot more. And you can't underestimate the power of television when it comes to this kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you mentioned that chefs are defending their cookbooks tooth and nail, but how secretive are the cookbooks of the world's top chefs? Are they more likely to share things now in the era of social media and viral marketing and such?
Those cookbooks of the world's top chef at that really top level in your world's top 50 restaurants, they're pretty detailed.
Yeah.
Like to the point where you would not cook anything from them. Like I think I've got one from the restaurant Fabiken over in Sweden, and you have to ferment something in a birchwood trunk for 3 months. Like that's actually an instruction in there. And then but all these like crazy ingredients, these crazy techniques, they're just not for the home chef. But they're very nice photos. They're very good to have on the coffee table. But I think other chefs buy them, and they're more than happy to kind of share their knowledge with other chefs. And then as long as no one's stealing anything directly, which again, now in the world of social media, very, very hard to do and get away with, because you'll get caught out very quickly.
Yeah.
Is there any recipe these days that chefs are trying to crack that one restaurant in the past has had, or one that has kind of been lost to the annals of history that they're trying to bring back?
Oh, no. Great question. Not that I'm aware of. I think we're really pushing the food to its 10th degree now, and the whole I think what we're trying to do now, and what I'm noticing, which is great, is with Australian ingredients. We're a very young country in terms of post-colonial cooking, and Aboriginal cultures for years knew how to utilize these ingredients and manipulate them for taste, and now white people, watch it, whatever, we're just rediscovering all that kind of stuff now. So like that's where experimentation is going. So the world of Australian ingredients is really, really, really interesting. So people trying to crack how to make those ingredients as tasty as they possibly can. That's what's fascinating, because you can't just pick up some Davidson plum or a bunyan nut and it's going to be delicious instantaneously. You've really got to work a little bit hard to crack that. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing a lot of. Yeah, but I think hopefully that whole idea of that fat duck style molecular gastronomy thing, and that's going away these days, thankfully. Thankfully. Yeah, it's just all about sourcing good produce, and then what can you do to it to make it taste the most like itself, really, and bring out its best. And
yeah, for sure. So, Colin, one of your recent articles from February this year spoke about the dietary requirements of the food critic. How do you keep yourself from needing to hire an extra pair of legs on the job?
An extra pair of legs, an extra stomach, or an
extra pair of legs in case you can't move.
Our detective this week, Nero Wolfe, has Archie Goodwin, his sidekick, who is effectively his pair of legs. Nero Wolfe himself mainly just sits in a chair and has Archie go and do the actual research while Nero does the thinking.
It's fantastic.
Oh, fantastic. I love this a lot. What a legend. I steal that idea. No, so here you go. Don't eat much for breakfast. Don't eat much for lunch, especially if it's a weekday. And then dinner, do whatever you want.
That's sound advice.
Avoid bread. To start with, which can be hard, especially if you have much for breakfast or lunch. And then if there's chips on the table, one chip's enough. Like that's enough to tell you about every other chip, So I kind of avoid those starchy carbs and potatoes and all that kind of thing, because that'll fill you up very, very quickly. And don't go too hard on dessert either. Like have a couple of mouthfuls or whatever, but then just kind of leave it, because then you will walk away from the restaurant feeling pretty gross, especially if you've got a tasting menu that's like 18, 20 courses long or whatever. You want to walk away from a restaurant feeling pretty good, like this was a good experience. I enjoyed that. I feel comfortably full. I don't feel disgusting like I need an extra pair of legs or I need to walk out
I
of
was
here.
going to say, you want to feel like you can walk at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, look, most food critics I know in Australia are pretty responsible with that kind of stuff. They don't gorge themselves. So I think that idea of that gluttonous, like 200-kilo food critic in the corner, Mr. Creosote from Monty Python, I think I want to say. Yeah, that kind of image. I think that's pretty much dead.
Do you think that's a bit of a rite of passage, though, for new food critics, that they go to a restaurant, absolutely overdo it, and then realize they have to change things?
Yes. Yes, sir. I reckon in that first year of doing this, my cholesterol was not good. I was very fat on the inside and out. And out. So it is hard, but you've really got to be careful, especially around. So our Good Food Guide review season, for the Good Food Guide, which comes out yearly, we review all the restaurants in the guide. Each year we update the reviews and make sure the scores are still up to date, and 2 hats or 1 hat or whatever it might be, or 3 hats. And so that period, which lasts from about January through to about June, that can be pretty hard going in terms of you might do 2 or 3 restaurants a week, especially if you do regional trips away to regional anywhere in Australia now that we're national. And then you might have just 7 days of lunch, dinner of long 12-course meals. And now I'm not complaining about this.
Yeah.
It's a great thing. It's a great job. I complain about it once to a mate who works up in Avalon in a warehouse, and he lives in Summerhill. And I said, oh man, I'm just sick of seeing so much veal tartare on menus. And so I've had my 3rd tartare this week. And he's like, you know what I did today? I got on the train for 2.5 hours. I moved pallets from one side of a warehouse to another. Then I had Hungry Jacks for lunch. Then I went back home, and then I'm going to do that again tomorrow. So don't you dare complain to me about this too many bunch of bloody veal tartare in the Hunter Valley. So you just got to be careful about it though, so you don't feel gross, because it's a privilege. He does a great bloody job, and you don't want to do it and kind of like and waste an opportunity to have a very, very nice time on the work expense card.
Our detective, Nero Wolfe, he's renowned for sitting in his New York brownstone, not going anywhere, not bothering with the rest of the world, and it takes 15 of the world's best chefs to get him down to Florida for our book. Do you think that there's something about the food of your home city that will really keep you there, or as a man that travels a lot to write your reviews for good food, do you think that there's stuff to be found around the world that's worth actually checking out?
Oh, yeah, sir. I'm from Newcastle. We have a ramen store there that opened last year. That's the first ramen store in Newcastle, and I bloody love ramen. So I love going to Tokyo for that, or just around Sydney. There's so many great ramen stores. But yeah, Newcastle's a wasteland. I wouldn't recommend anyone really to go there for food. Shout outs to Restaurant Subo and Restaurant Mason. If you're listening, you guys are great. I love you. Keep doing what you're doing. But for the most part, it's pretty awful. You talked before about your mother's cooking. Mum's a terrible cook.
Don't say that. How could you?
I think most mums kind of, they're not great.
I remember I got into a taxi one time, and the driver asked me, "Who's the best chef you know?" And I was like, probably my uncle, and he just looked at me like I'd committed the highest sin in the world because I didn't say my mother. It was absolute sacrilege to not say one's mother is the best chef you know.
Silly. What if your mother doesn't cook? For me, look, my father was always the cook in my family. Not to derail completely, but yes, he cooked steak and mashed potatoes and veggies every night, and we ate it, and it was delicious.
Awesome, right? Yeah. My dad wasn't doing that, but my mum's repertoire was a bit more than steak and veggies and mash. But Dad's was certainly not. And so I still, what I call the mum's working back, Dad's on dinner duty school of cooking of fish finger sandwiches and chips on sandwiches and rissoles on bread and that kind of thing. Anything between 2 slices of white bread was dinner terrible. Around our house. When Mum was working back, Dad's on dinner. So traveling, just tips on traveling. Yeah, there's so much good food around the world, and you should always go source it out. Authenticity doesn't mean deliciousness. I think that's a real big misconception that it's like, oh, that's not authentic. That's not how you do it. Like, I don't care. That's it's bloody good though. I want,
Yeah.
And also I find when you go and do, shall we say, food tourism in places like Tokyo or Paris or New York, if you're trying to find the best slice of pizza in New York or the best taco in Mexico City or the best ramen in Tokyo, the lineups for those places
insane
can be pretty insane. The best barbecue in America, for example. And if you want to tick the box, then yeah, go for it. Go and line up. But the other place down the road, which has a lineup a quarter of the size, is not going to be as quarter as good.
Yeah.
So, don't waste your trip lining up for that kind of stuff, and just kind of like, it's going to be pretty delicious. And yeah, I find I'd rather hit like 3 ramen stores in Tokyo in one afternoon than spend 3 hours waiting for the one. So
Yeah. Well, all right, Callan, thank you so much for joining us here on Death of the Reader. If you want to catch any of Callan's food writing, you can catch him in Nine's publications, such as at goodfood.com.au for those of you who aren't getting the newspapers here in Australia. Callan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And we'll be back with Rex Stout's TooMany Cooks in just a second. You're listening to Death of the Reader. We are Flex and Herds. This is, pause for effect, your murder mystery world tour.
You're allowed to get away with that? Can we pause on radio?
I think we can.
I think we get kicked off if we pause for too long.
I think if we pause for too long, they just start playing music over the top of us.
Which we don't want. So let's not make it too long of a pause.
Yeah.
In fact, if we just say the word pause instead, I feel like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Murder Mystery World Tour, we're talking about TooMany Cooks. This is the absolute final part of the final episode.
Yes.
We'd like to thank you for joining us. Talk about fair play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've spoken the whole way through this book about fair play and the fact that Rex Stout was not a proponent of conventional fair play. And as always, if you want to know about the conventional rules of fair play in the detective fiction genre, you can catch that on the podcast online. Just search for Extra.
Yep. Talking about Knox's rules, talking about Van Dyne's rules, all that fun stuff. Making sure that the reader has the proper tools to solve the mystery for themselves.
But Rex Stout has no such concern, it seems.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He'd rather make a good story, which I am okay with.
Is this story fair? I would give this, if I was to rate it on a scale of fairness from, 1 to 10, I would give it a 6. It's above average, but it's not stellar in terms of its fairness.
I feel like the scale used to be how hard the mystery was. But you know what? If we go on fairness, that's a good scale too.
Well,
I think I'd agree.
The scale was a made-up thing more to illustrate vaguely how we feel rather than actually a strict rule set.
I like the idea that we just have a different scale every time. This is going well.
So the scale of deliciousness for this novel then?
I mean, that's for the whole novel. The scale of deliciousness is like 7 chickens out of 10. Let's be real. 7 entire...
Only 7?
Entire roast chicken.
Only 7?
Oh my goodness, you're so right. Because if it's just deliciousness, all right, 9 3/4.
Good.
But the quarter that's left out is one of the wings. Is like one of the wing parts.
And
because the drumstick is where it's at.
Nero Wolfe already ate it.
This is true. Although I feel like that man will go for a drumstick instantly. You know what? Let's leave out the drumstick. That could be Nero Wolfe. But we get 9 chickens and 3/4 of a chicken, and it's delicious.
And okay, I think Herds that I think that this story has perhaps swayed my heart a little bit. I thought going into this, when we got to the end of chapter 6, that I was done for. I thought that we had abandoned fair play. I thought that there was no culprit in sight because it didn't feel like anyone was particularly suspicious.
No.
But then Alberto Malfi came out of nowhere, out of seemingly nowhere, out of literally nowhere.
You're right. He doesn't have any business being in that scene except to say, what about the Zlotta guy? And it's like, who's Zlotta? Well, he was mentioned in the first part of the novel. He might be important. No. He's a red herring.
Yeah. And as we spoke about on the first part of the show today, this novel does an excellent job of recontextualizing things. We won't have that discussion again, but I think that when dealing with the fair play of the novel, it is very important that that is what it sacrifices. It sacrifices fair play for excellent recontextualization.
Yeah, sure.
And if we look back at all of the clues, for example, as I stated in the previous episode, I said that if you look at all of the people that had motive presented in chapters 1 to 6, all of the people that had motive to kill Philip Laszio were, all disconnected. None of them really seemed weightier than one or the other. But the only person that tied them all together, other than Philip Laszio himself, was Raymond Liggett as the owner of Philip Lasio's workplace.
Yeah, for sure. I do think that you could very easily make this a proper fair play mystery.
Yeah.
I think that all you would really need to do is, barring, changing the narrative yourself, but you could set it from the perspective of Nero Wolfe. I think that would be very easy. A lot of the clues that we kind of talk about in the later chapters are things that Nero Wolfe was aware of or was suspecting way back when. He says, this is something that Raymond Liggett said. This is when he talked about the source printemps,
Yes.
which was not mentioned in the newspapers.
What a ridiculous clue that was.
Exactly, because it's not an obvious one. It's a hand wave remark.
Yeah.
It's something that Nero Wolfe apparently, draws attention to in his mind, but we're never really discussed on camera, so to speak, in the pages of the novel. And he gets confirmation of it when he has his telegram come over, which is also not explained to us.
Yeah.
The easiest way to make this fair play and also to follow the rules that we've kind of been looking at in the previous novels would be to say, here is Nero Wolfe's process. He tells Archie, this is why I sent this telegram. This is what the telegram says because it's in a code. And codes are kind of weird in murder mystery novels when you're not supposed to kind of solve them.
But Archie is such an entertaining perspective that I don't mind at all.
No, for sure.
Nero Wolfe sitting in an armchair thinking about things for 17 chapters would be excruciating.
It would be an interesting experiment, but I don't think it would be as entertaining as what we got.
There's probably one of the 40-some Nero Wolfe novels in which that happens.
Yeah.
But, it would not be the one that I would reach for first.
I would be very interested, actually, in reading a novel which is purely set from the perspective of an armchair detective who never leaves the room, and the clues are like, I heard a gunshot. Something like flew past, like a newspaper flies past the window, like covered in egg yolk. And they're trying to like figure out based on these, visual and auditory stimuli that they get within the room. Of course, that would be very silly. We should find that novel.
Maybe we should. Yeah, but, I think going back to the source printemps, it goes very much back to murder mystery short stories, where a lot of murder mystery short stories have what are nearly grammatical clues.
Yes.
In this one, the main clue that Nero Wolfe banks on is the fact that Raymond Liggett supposedly couldn't have found out that it was source printemps that they had to taste.
Even though, the novel tells us that he went straight to Wolfe, but there are people that you pass on the way through a spa house.
And let's be fair here.
Yeah.
He also supposedly wasn't in the town.
Yes.
The day that the crime happened.
Yes.
But that was a lie as well. So it's not exactly as strong evidence as Nero Wolfe makes it out to be. But I think that we as the reader can see why it's stronger than it might actually be in situ.
And of course, this is all in service of building the suspense and making it so that Nero Wolfe's grand scene where he exposits and tells us all about who the culprit is and how he figured it out, it makes it that much more interesting.
Yeah.
But that's the balance, of course, is writing a murder mystery where we can appreciate the talent of the detective and they don't feel insufferable, finding that balance there, which is a bit tricky for some authors. Anyway, for one author maybe. But yeah, finding that balance between a detective who tells everything to the audience, and they can figure out who the killer is, but they just won't tell anyone explicitly who it is, Finding that balance between suspense and annoyance, I think, is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And this novel does sacrifice some of that fair play in order for Nero Wolfe to be a little bit smarter and for us to be in the dark a little bit longer.
I think that one of the other most important aspects to consider about this novel is that it's not the first one in its series.
Yep.
Nearly every other novel we've covered was the first one on any particular detective that an author wrote, the only exception being one that wasn't even about a serialized character.
Yeah.
So this story has had a lot more time to work out who the characters in it are. And I think that perhaps is why Archie and Nero come across so strongly in the 6th book of their series compared to some of the other detectives where we've only just met them.
Yeah. I do think that is also a testament to the writing of Rex Stout that we are able to come in on book 6. And that's kind of an interesting detail about all these detective, series is that they often go for 10, 20, 40 books. And I feel like it's the duty of those authors to try to create each book as its own identity. Even if that's not always possible, but I think that Rex Stout, at least 6 books in, is doing a very good job of that. I get a very strong impression of both of these characters because he's had time to think about them. And I don't feel like I've missed out on who they are.
Yeah.
Even when we bring in characters like Saul, and like Fritz, like when we talk about these characters who are part of the extended mythos of the story, I don't feel like my reading experience is dampened because I don't have that context. I might understand it better. There's a whole passage all the way back in chapter 1 where Archie describes all the different, friends of Wolfe being in tears because he's leaving to go on a holiday. And I don't get the full impact of that scene, but I don't feel like annoyed by it.
Yeah.
Finding that balance there is really important.
And I think one of the other things to consider there is that it isn't necessary for these authors to actually go through and make each story accessible as its own. I know that one of our listeners has actually complained to me that Agatha Christie is particularly guilty of spoiling her own stories in later books in her own series.
Yeah.
Which is one of the difficulties with getting into her stories. And I think Sir Arthur Conan Doyle does that as well, but it's been a while since I've been over that, so I can't say for sure on that front. But, you know, I think that there is a certain value to the completely isolated serialized stories like this, where I'm sure if you were a well-read Rex Stout fan, you would be able to spot hints and jokes about past books in this one that, you know, even aren't obvious like the ones that Herds pointed out that Archie brings up. But at the same time, the fact that you were able to jump in anywhere in the series and have such a good time like we did with this novel is excellent.
Yeah, finding something of value in a long series like this is, I mean, it's incredibly valuable. It's like if you were to jump into a long book series, or I should say a series with a lot of long books like The Lord of the Rings or Frank Herbert's Dune, series like that, you would have a hard time getting into the characters.
Yeah.
You know, if you didn't read Fellowship of the Ring, you'd be like, what's this ring doing here? Who are the orcs?
and of course, one of the challenges for us is that we have to find the books that do fulfill that role.
Yes.
Where we can say, you know, this is the book we're covering for the next 3 weeks. This is what we think you can do. If we jump into the middle of a series and they spoil the previous 6 books in the series in the opening.
Or somebody else's series.
Yeah.
Van Dyne.
Van Dyne.
Looking at you, sir.
Still upset about that.
His ghost will haunt us.
His ghost continues to haunt me. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a very interesting part of detective fiction as a genre in particular, because it was a genre that was so incredibly franchised and serialized compared to other things of its time. Not to say that it was the only one.
Of course. But it's fascinating to see that murder mystery lends itself so well to this format.
Yeah. And it's also one of the main difficulties of the genre, as we've spoken about, for example, with The Three Taps, where one thing we really enjoyed about that novel was the way that every character felt so clear and defined, but then when we go on to the next mansion and none of those characters are there, how do we rebuild that from the ground up without just beating a dead horse?
I will say, where's our comic book version of this? Where's our, like, all of the superheroes are in the same timeline, but, like, it's all the detectives, and they all try and solve a murder mystery together? Where's that? I want that, guys. Come on. Who's going to write that for me?
But yeah, Herds, I think it's pretty obvious from what we've been talking about that this story, it's not completely fair, but it's also not what matters.
I mean, look,
that's all right.
I know this will surprise many people, but even I had picked out who the culprit was. In this
What?
one, you know, I couldn't quite figure it out.
What? Who do you think it was?
Oh, I don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about it.
Who do you think it was, Herds? Come on.
Look, I might have thought it was Malfi.
That's fair.
Because he runs around and he talks to people and he's like, oh, it was Zoltar or whatever his name was. Zolota, that's his name.
He does seem very evil.
I mean, yeah, just the way that he's running around and they're talking about Corsican stabbing each other. And he's an actual active participant in the story. You know?
Yeah.
He shows up out of nowhere, but he's just a henchman.
No, absolutely. I can sympathize with that choice. I nearly made that foolish error myself, Herds.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I survived in the end.
That's all right. Maybe the next novel I'll have better luck. Flex, you want to tell us about the next book?
Yeah, Herds. I'm very excited for this one.
Why
we
so?
are finally escaping the golden age of murder mystery.
Yay. What country are we going to?
We're going halfway between America and Russia.
What does that even mean?
It's an American author who's from Russia.
That's amazing.
So,
alrighty, cool.
Where's this? Close enough.
Where's this novel set? Tell us about it.
The future, Herds.
The future? Oh, it's not a where, it's a when.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Herds, you might have heard of this arguably iconic author by the name of Isaac Asimov.
That's the robot guy.
That's the robot guy?
My goodness. What?
Yeah. The 3 laws of robotics themselves will be the next set of rules that we'll be covering on this show.
Okay, I'm down for that.
As we delve in to Isaac Asimov's 1954 novel, The Caves of Steel.
The Caves of Steel?
Yes.
Are we going to space?
We will be going kind of to space. We have a robot. We have a robot detective. We have a human detective. We'll be covering chapters 1 to 6 and Herds. I am so excited to delve into sci-fi and murder mystery. We'll speak on the next episode about why it's so significant. But this novel broke some serious ground.
I'm so ready. I love sci-fi.
This has been Death of the Reader. We hope you've enjoyed Too Many Cooks by Rex Stout as much as we did.
We'll see you next week.
You're listening to the Death of the Reader extended cut. We have reached the end of Too Many Cooks by Rex Stout. What a pleasure it was doing this novel.
Yeah. We've reached the top of the mountain. We've got our chicken burger wrap sandwich with like ice cream on top. That's what I'm throwing on at the end.
I
A
see.
reward
So
for your
that
hard
joke
work.
earlier was you foreshadowing
Yes.
Callan's opinion about the zinger.
That's the one.
I've never had one of those, and I don't know if I want to. I feel like
You should try it.
I feel like not knowing what Sydney's third best chicken sandwich tastes like
I mean,
is probably a good thing.
it's the third best though. Like that's like I know it's not the best, but that's still pretty good.
Well, yeah,
Right?
but it
Like-
means if I don't have the third best, it brings the fourth best up, right?
You're right. So if you just have, your mum's cooking zinger burger, then that is elevated because you haven't even had any other zinger burgers in your life.
Something like that.
Where I get to zinger, it doesn't matter. Point is,
It's right. We've given them too much free promotion. They haven't given us anything in return.
It's true. Point is, we've really enjoyed our time with Nero Wolfe. He's definitely the cuddliest of the detectives on the show, I think, so far.
And now, Herds, we finally get to go super far away on our Murder Mystery World Tour.
To space, sort of.
No, to right down the block in New York, just 3,000 years in the future.
Yeah, basically space then.
It's basically
No,
space.
it's great.
I wonder, Herds, how far the Earth would have moved in the 3,000 years between Rex Stout writing and the setting of Isaac Asimov's Caves of Steel.
It's an excellent question.
Do you reckon that we could actually math that out, figure out exactly how far away those two destinations are from each other?
I feel like someone must have already done that, right? Somebody must know how close we're going to be to the sun in 3,000 years.
Because
somebody has. We get
this
scientists on this
this
show.
is probably the largest leap we've taken on the world tour so far,
No,
if
for
we
sure.
if we factor in that distance.
Absolutely.
Though it is kind of cheating.
No, absolutely. I'm down for it. Cheating is my middle name. On the map, rather than just being like a line from one city to the next, it's just like this big loop that goes around the Earth several times. 3,000 times to be specific.
Well, no, but the
And it
Earth is
comes right
also
back.
moving through the solar system.
Oh, you're right.
And the solar system is moving
So the
through
line
the
just
galaxy,
goes-
and the
the
galaxy
line-
is moving through the universe.
Yeah. So the line goes off the screen.
Yeah.
And we don't see where it goes. And it has a little note that says, add 20 more star maps. And then it comes right back around the other side. And that's what that line is.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to finding out what that number is.
It's pretty big.
This has been the extended cut for Too Many Cooks here on Death of the Reader. We hope you've enjoyed this novel as much as we did, and we will see you with Caves of Steel by Isaac Asimov next week.
Time for robots. Let's do it.
Understanding that. That's it.
Thanks, Flex.
That's the end of the episode, everyone.
Thanks, Flex. Off we go. Boom.